Chapter 385, Fated Destiny. The deep-sea dragon carp did not understand what steaming meant, nor did it grasp the concept of char grilling, but its cultivation level was not low, and it could sense the hostility in Guan's voice, which filled it with extreme panic. Guan watched it cry incessantly and he felt amused. Such a coward, and yet it deliberately sought out danger. How peculiar. Wait a minute. Could this fellow be like Zhu Shi, who also loved to act? Guan decided to teach it a harsh lesson, so he cast an illusion on it. Immediately afterward, the deep-sea dragon carp saw a fish that looked exactly like itself being steamed, then char-grilled. When it saw the char-grilling, its fish skin was scorched black, crisped up and oozed oil. It could not take it anymore. Accompanied by a spasm, the deep-sea dragon carp at Guan's feet fainted dead away. It's this weak. Guan used his foot to flip the deep-sea dragon carp's body, and seeing that it remained motionless, he felt even more exasperated. After hesitating for a moment, Guan moved the deep-sea dragon carp to a distant part of the sea. If you come back, you're certainly dead. If you dare to reveal my location, your end will be even more miserable than what you've seen. Guan transmitted his words into the deep-sea dragon carp's mind. Given the realm of the deep-sea dragon carp, when it awoke, even if it did not understand the language of the human race, it would still understand what Guan meant to express. As the clouds dispersed beside the great lake, and Hao stood with his back to the Saint Ancestor, gazing up at the sky. The Saint Ancestor looked at Hao with increasing satisfaction in his eyes, as if viewing a rare treasure. I never thought you could master the heavenly Tao divine record so quickly. Given time, there will be no one in this world who can rival you, the Saint Ancestor praised. And Hao turned his head and glanced at the Saint Ancestor from the corner of his eye, asking, has Shengtian managed to master this skill? The Saint Ancestor replied, of course, but you will surpass him sooner or later. Upon hearing this, Hao fell into contemplation. Having mastered the heavenly Tao divine record, he deeply understood the strength of this skill, which gave him a greater appreciation for Shengtian's might. Even in the Immortal dynasty, all immortals deemed the holy court's Shengtian the strongest in the world. How powerful must one be to win the respect even from rival forces regarding one's strength? I must leave now. Thank you, Senior, for your teachings. I will never forget this kindness, Hao said. He turned around and bowed to the Saint Ancestor. The Saint Ancestor asked, will you make an enemy of the Holy Court in the future? Hao looked at him and answered, I am not sure, no one can predict the future. However, I can assure you, I will not make enemies with the Holy Court on behalf of the Immortal dynasty. My joining was solely for the pursuit of greater strength. The Saint Ancestor nodded, smiling, and said, Junior, may you attain nirvana early. Once you do, you will awaken your true power and feel the force of the heavenly Tao, the supreme way in this world. Hao acknowledged, then turned and leaped, transforming into a white light that sped away, disappearing into the distant clouds in the blink of an eye. The Saint Ancestor watched his departure with a sense of wonder, musing, I thought this was a declining epoch, but now it seems to be the sign of a prosperous era. Who knows, looking back in 1,000,000 years, what myths will have emerged? While the Saint Ancestor was ruminating, Guan was also reflecting. Inside the hidden spirit palace. Standing on the path between the medicine gardens, Guan looked into the distance, murmuring, this guy really is persistent. He was referring to the deep-sea dragon carp. Since their last encounter, 60 years had passed. After several days of silence, the deep-sea dragon carp began its search for the hidden spirit palace, a quest that lasted for 60 years. Over those 60 years, most of the disciples from the Third Medicine Valley and Mystic Valley had changed, and in the mundane world, several generations had passed on. The deep-sea dragon carp, having traversed many seas and faced countless dangers, finally arrived in the sea area of the hidden spirit palace. Now it was covered in wounds, its scales no longer the resplendent sheen of old. Here a few were missing, there some were gone, presenting a very pitiful sight. Its will moved Guan. He could discern that throughout those years, the deep-sea dragon carp had not divulged his or the hidden spirit palace's existence to other demon creatures. Without probing for information, the creature had managed to find its way here. It seemed to possess hidden talents unknown to all. Under normal circumstances, given the distance, even a Mahayana realm might have difficulty finding the hidden spirit palace in 60 years. Oh well. Guan shook his head and continued to pick medicinal herbs. He opened his attribute panel while gathering the herbs. Name, Guan, lifespan, 612/958 702 371, physique, mixed yuan refined void body, cultivation level, Taoist hidden immortal realm perfect. Almost 10 billion years of lifespan. Awesome. Guan was in high spirits. This was lifespan he had earned through hard work, not through theft or slaughter, and he felt a great sense of accomplishment. The world was stirring with excitement. Great powers and geniuses were emerging one after another, while he quietly developed his strength, watching the struggles of the world. He was racing toward longevity at an even faster pace, and the feeling was exhilarating. The more he thought about it, the happier Guan became, and he couldn't help but hum a tune. After he finished gathering the medicinal herbs, he returned to the Supreme Sect. The deep-sea dragon carp had just entered the region. It would take another month or two to get near the hidden spirit palace, so he was not in a hurry to meet it. If the deep-sea dragon carp were to die on this last stretch of road, it would indicate that such fortune was not in its destiny, and no one could be blamed for that. Returning to the third medicine valley just after midday, the hot summer breeze blew into the valley, and sunlight shone on the seven stars mirror in Guan's hand, refracting a dazzling light. Guan used the seven stars mirror as a fan, leisurely strolling forward while waving it to cool down. An Xen suddenly ran over, stopping in front of him and said, "Master, Wuju is in trouble." Guan asked, "What happened?" "Today I went to the inner sect city and heard that he has been thrown into the dungeon of the Supreme Sect, apparently for harming a fellow sect member," an Xen replied quickly. Upon hearing this, Guan furrowed his brow and said, "I'll go to the inner sect." After speaking, he turned and left. An Xen breathed a sigh of relief. Telling his master about the situation was enough. With his master's capabilities, resolving it wouldn't be difficult. Less than half an hour later, Guan, following the guidance of a dungeon disciple, reached the 7th floor underground. Having been with the Supreme Sect for 600 years, this was his first visit to this place. As the Supreme Sect grew stronger, the restrictions of the dungeon steadily increased. It was said that the 18th underground floor imprisoned an immortal. The dungeon disciple halted in front of a cell, briefly explained a few things and then turned and left. Moving beyond the 5th floor underground was not something just anyone could decide to do. Guan had pulled some strings, so the dungeon disciple was quite courteous to him. The cell was made from special redwood, its surface carved with talismans and containing multiple layers of restrictions. Guan looked inside the cell door. It was dim inside and Wuju, with his hair disheveled, leaned against the wall, sleeping. Inside the dungeon, cultivation was not possible. Spiritual energy was cut off, and Wuju had become noticeably thinner. Guan had known when Wuju had been caught, but he was not worried about Wuju's death given the protections within the Supreme Sect, so he didn't come earlier. When an Xan found Guan from the standpoint of causality logic, Guan should visit Wuju too. Guan, who studied the way of cause and effect, began to see the causality in the world as a game. He was willing to abide by the rules of the game unless the game annoyed him, at which point he would change it. "Brother Wu, I've come to see you," Guan said, simultaneously casting a lifespan detection on Wuju. Wuju Unification Realm 5th Floor 614/4500/8300, His maximum lifespan finally increased. This kid really needed to experience hardship to reach path enlightenment. Everything coming too easily was not good. The Wuju in the dark slowly opened his eyes, his vision was blurred, only able to make out a silhouette outside the cell door. After Guan called out to him again, Wuju's vision suddenly became clear. "Brother Gu," Wuju looked at Guan, his face full of shame, not knowing what to say. He was still very touched. The crime he had committed was serious, and the Fang family had formidable influence, leading the Supreme Sect to abandon him. Those friends of his had been avoiding him like the plague. Having been imprisoned for so long, Guan was the first to visit him. How could he not be moved? "Why aren't you speaking? Do you not recognize me?" Guan feigned seriousness as he asked. He had already deduced the incident regarding Wuju killing a fellow member. The incident couldn't be entirely blamed on Wuju. The fellow member was also a genius of the Supreme Sect, who had borne a grudge against Wuju for a previous defeat and disliked him. After Wuju was defeated by Zhou Tongyu, he went out to gain experience and encountered the genius. Taking advantage of his numbers, he mocked Wuju as inferior to Zhou Tongyu, wasting the sect's investment. Wuju was not one to be bullied easily. An argument broke out between them, which escalated into a fight. The other party bore the intent to kill, leading Wuju to retaliate with full force, and eventually, a tragedy occurred. Since there were other sect members present, Wuju chose to return to the sect and report the incident, but those sect members turned against him, claiming Wuju struck first. And so Wuju was thrown into the dungeon, tarnishing his reputation. Regardless, Wuju indeed had killed a fellow sect member, and as a righteous path sect, such a crime was truly unforgivable in the eyes of the supreme sect. Wuju felt he had made a mistake and was too ashamed to face Guan. "I don't disown you, it's just that I'm too ashamed to face you," said Wuju, taking a deep breath and attempting to stay calm. Ever since he became known as a genius, too many people flocked around him, all of whom were nice to him. Along with being at different stages, Wuju met with Guan less and less. Sometimes he would even forget Guan was his most important brother. Now that he had fallen, all those close friends refused to see him, yet it was Guan who came. In that moment, Wuju was filled with self-mockery. What exactly happened? Guan asked, pulling Wuju out from his dejection. Wuju calmed himself and began to recount the events and the reasons behind them. After a while, when Wuju finished speaking, Guan stayed silent for a moment, then said, "It cannot all be blamed on you. Didn't anyone upstairs believe you?" Wuju replied helplessly, "How could they believe it? It's not like they can use soul-searching skill on those people, and even if they did it to me, how many would be willing to believe?" Guan said, "No problem, I will speak to the sect leader about it." Wuju responded, "The sect leader has already spoken with me, asking me to bide my time until the controversy settles somewhat, and then he will find a way." As the supreme sect grew stronger, LV Badian, being the sect leader, found his authority diminishing. Guan comforted him, "No problem, I will speak with him again. If that doesn't work, I will ask others to speak up as well. I refuse to believe that the so-called Sheng family can have their way all alone within the supreme sect." Chapter 386. The sect with 10 million disciples. Upon hearing Guan's words of comfort, Wuju could only offer a bitter smile. An amused chuckle came from a nearby cell. Covering the sky with one hand? The Sheng family really has such capability. Guan turned his head to look and saw an old man with white hair approaching the edge of the prison cell, his hands bony and clutching the mahogany bars. He looked at Guan with a face full of scorn. Guan feigned a frown and asked, "Could it be that you are also from the Sheng family?" The old man laughed and said, "If I were from the Sheng family, how would I have ended up like this? Like your friend, I offended the Sheng family, and even the Hall of Elders told me to lay low for a while. I've been locked up for a century now, and I fear I will spend the rest of my days here, waiting for the day the Sheng family sheathes their butcher's blade." After listening, Wuju slightly lowered his head. Guan angrily said, "I refuse to believe it. Is the Sheng family really so tyrannical? I am going to find the sect leader now." With those words, he left with a swish of his sleeve. Wuju opened his mouth but in the end said nothing. Deep down, he too harbored a glimmer of hope. The Third Medicine Valley was a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The socially adept Guan might indeed find a way. After Guan's presence faded from the dungeon level, Wuju began to worry. He suddenly feared that if this did not succeed, it might instead implicate Guan. "Wuju, isn't it? I didn't expect you to have such a naive friend. Shouldn't the side of a genius be surrounded by hypocrisy?" The old man said in a mocking tone. Wuju didn't respond, too weary to engage with him. Wuju was already familiar with the man's toxic tongue, and he disdained to argue with such people. He seemed dejected, yet deep down he held a confidence. He was still capable of enlightenment. If no one stood up for him, one day he would uphold justice for himself. Meanwhile, after leaving the dungeon, Guan did not go directly to find LV Badian. Considering Wuju could find enlightenment, it was better to let him reflect for more time. Guan wandered around the inner sect city, meeting disciples who had graduated 200 years ago and probing information about the Sheng family. He could divine outcomes, but he preferred to immerse himself in this grudge and investigate in an ordinary capacity. If that failed, then he could only win by virtue. Guan's disciples were spread throughout the supreme sect. While it was said he was discerning about the Sheng family, in reality he was enjoying free meals and drinks. Having wandered all day, he felt satisfied body and soul. From today's findings, the Sheng family indeed held significant power. There were many clans within the supreme sect, but few could stand out and incite fear as they did. The disciples were fearful that Guan would offend the Sheng family. Upon understanding why he was investigating the Sheng family, they all advised him to stay out of it. When Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley, it was already night. Lights shone brightly in the valley, and from a distance, Guan could hear the laughter and cheer of the disciples. Guan felt relieved. Thankfully, the powerful clans within the supreme sect had not jeopardized his Medicine Valley. If they had, blood would have flown like rivers. Guan stopped at the base of his own building but didn't go up immediately. Instead he knocked on Ji Xiaoyu's door. "Come in." Ji Xiaoyu's pleasant voice echoed from inside, and Guan pushed the door open, then closed it behind him. As he approached Ji Xiaoyu, she curiously asked, "It's rare for you to seek me out proactively, is something the matter?" "What kind of question is that? Can't I visit you without a reason? Weren't you the one who blamed me for not taking the initiative to see you for decades?" Guan said dissatisfiedly, about to turn around and leave. Sitting on the bed, Ji Xiaoyu quickly grabbed his wrist. "Of course you can visit. Come, sit down," Ji Xiaoyu said gently with a smile, pulling Guan to sit next to her. Guan grunted, "I saw your place was bright and lively, and something just drove me to come have a chat with you, but your first words angered me quite a bit." "Oh my, can't I admit my mistake?" Ji Xiaoyu replied helplessly. How could he suddenly become so childish? But it was quite amusing. Such were Ji Xiaoyu's thoughts as her lips curved upward involuntarily. Guan then smiled and said, "That's more like it. Today I saw Wuju, and he began to recount Wuju's trials, with Ji Xiaoyu listening attentively because she remembered Wuju well. After Guan finished talking about Wuju's situation, he continued with his interactions with other disciples. For the first half hour, Guan did all the talking. Ji Xiaoyu then figured out his intention. Surely he wasn't seeking her help, was he? In the end, Guan lamented, "Even within the Supreme Sect, injustice exists. Fortunately, our Medicine Valley keeps a low profile and serves the Supreme Sect undisturbed. Why are these clans so overbearing, and might they one day surpass the Supreme Sect?" Ji Xiaoyu responded, "It's possible but difficult. If it comes to that, the Supreme Sect might just become one of their subordinate forces. The stronger the Supreme Sect, the more hopeless it becomes for those disciples caught in dire straits." Guan sighed. He then stood up and said, "We've talked for so long, you should continue cultivating now. Your future is not limited by the Supreme Sect." After speaking, he walked away. Ji Xiaoyu watched his departing figure, wanting to say something but hesitated. Once the door was closed, she couldn't help but mutter, "He only visits when he needs something, and he even expects me to apologize while seeking my help?" She shook her head and chuckled, then took out a piece of talisman paper and began to write. As soon as Guan sat down, he saw a white dove's phantom flying away through the window, disappearing into the night sky in the blink of an eye. Guan's mouth curved up, he thought to himself, not bad, quite sensible. Several days later, LV Badian came to Guan, accompanied by an old acquaintance, Vice Sect leader Jihan Tian. The three sat down in the room. Bang! Jihan Tian suddenly slammed the table and cursed, "The Sheng family truly goes too far. Those overseas families really haven't integrated the principles of the righteous path of the Supreme Sect into their ideology." LV Badian's eyelids twitched and he said in a deep voice, "Why are you yelling?" "I'm outraged. You give the order to suppress the Sheng family and I'll absolutely support you." "Why don't you give the order?" "The Ji family has good relations with the Sheng family. I'm caught in the middle, it's difficult for me." "It sounds as if the LV family hasn't benefited from the Sheng family either. We are both in tough positions." Watching them pass the buck, Guan found it amusing but also felt that the Supreme Sect had become somewhat superficial. Indeed, with the rapid expansion of the Supreme Sect, the cultivation levels of native high-ranking members couldn't keep up with the pace of the sect, naturally diluting their power. Guan spoke up, "Suddenly I feel like writing a book." Ji Hantian's eyes lit up, "That's a good idea, Pan An's influence is still considerable." Guan glanced at him and said, "I'll write that the Sheng family is a powerful clan that the Ji family and LV family fear." Ji Hantian glared and said, "Guan, don't joke around." Guan asked, "I understand why the sect leader is here, but Elder Ji, why have you come?" Ji Hantian huffed, "It's all because of you. That girl Ji Xiaoyu is actually helping you, so I had no choice but to come myself." Guan immediately felt somewhat annoyed. When the third miss was forced to go to the 7-star spirit realm, you couldn't stop it. Now Ji Xiaoyu asks you for help, and you face difficulties again. The Ji family is strong, but it feels like it's all about making compromises? At this remark, Ji Hantian's expression instantly darkened. Guan then opened a drawer, took out the fate-determining pen, and from a stack of papers beside him, he pulled out a sheet of white paper. Seeing the two argue, LV Badian intervened, "I also trust in Wuju, but the Sheng family lost a disciple, one considered among the top 3 talents of this generation. We must provide an explanation to the Sheng family, and I assure you I won't let anything happen to Wuju." Regardless of his relationship with Guan, in the years where Guan had strategized, he truly felt that the strength of the supreme sect today could not be separated from Guan's contributions. Guan remained silent, writing down names on the paper, all individuals related to the Wuju incident, including those from the Sheng family and others. They knew the truth but were pushing Wuju towards an abyss. If they were compelled, that would be one thing, but the conflict began with them following the Sheng family genius and insulting Wuju and even attacking him. Their lies were to protect themselves. Choosing to be lapdogs and bullying others, they should prepare for the backlash. What are you doing? LV Badian frowned and asked. Guan continued writing without speaking, making him genuinely afraid that Guan might do something foolish. He solemnly said, "The Sheng family has a loose immortal. Do you know how high a loose immortal's cultivation level is? If the path of immortality were smooth, you'd have to cultivate for tens of thousands of years. The supreme sect hasn't had an immortal live that long." Tens of thousands of years. This phrase weighed heavily, making LV Badian and Jihantian feel immense pressure just thinking about the age of the Sheng family's loose immortal. Guan lifted his pen, gazing down at the names on the paper and said with discontent, "I hate my own powerlessness. If I were an immortal, how could I stand by and watch my close friends suffer?" After saying this, he gripped the fate-determining pen and made 2 strokes on the paper, drawing a large X as if to vent his frustration. LV Badian tried to comfort him, "Don't think like that, and besides, the Sheng family is just angry but hasn't pressed me any further." Guan looked at him. "Do you remember what I told you hundreds of years ago when you were still Elder Tian?" Upon hearing this, LV Badian immediately fell silent. Jihantian spoke earnestly, "Guan, don't act impulsively. If we mess up, all 3 of us could be in trouble. We could be abandoned by our families, you could be abandoned by the supreme sect. All these are possible." Guan said, "Fine, I understand, I'll pretend I don't know about this matter." Seeing his indifferent expression, LV Badian was somewhat uneasy and asked, "Really? I am but a nascent soul realm cultivator. I can't break into dungeons or step through the Sheng family's gate. What can I do?" Guan replied. LV Badian, after hearing this, could only sigh. "I won't see you out, but I'll remember what you've said." While speaking, Guan pulled out a book from beside him. LV Badian wanted to say more, but Jihantian tugged at him, and after exchanging glances they stood up and left. Although Guan felt somewhat disappointed, he could also understand, not everyone had the same confidence as him. Nonetheless, he had already taken action. What happened next depended on how these 2 responded. If they didn't handle it well, they too should consider moving aside. This had nothing to do with personal connections. The Supreme Sect's sect leader and vice sect leader needed people with greater breadth of spirit to take on these roles, for the Supreme Sect was not just any clan sect, but a sect of millions of disciples. Chapter 387. The final road. LV Badian and another left, and after about half a month, rumors suddenly spread throughout the Supreme Sect. A group of crazed disciples were proclaiming throughout the inner sect city the incident of Sheng family's genius bullying Wuju, and consequently being killed in retaliation. The matter of Wuju killing a fellow sect member had already caused a huge uproar, and now these disciples were telling a different story, so how could it not provoke controversy? Even though those disciples were quickly controlled, the news still spread rapidly. Through the investigation of curious disciples, it turned out that the crazed group was originally the witness of Wuju's fratricide. Now, having seemingly lost their minds, they presented a different testimony from before, forcing people to consider the possibility of a conspiracy. Some suspected that someone behind Wuju had acted, others speculated that these individuals could no longer bear the psychological pressure and feigned insanity to reveal the truth, while some even believed that they had initially been poisoned by the Sheng family and were compelled to lie, but now that the effects of the poison were manifesting, they had lost their sanity and were revealing the truth with their last bit of lucidity. Opinions were varied, and Wuju once again became a center of attention within the Supreme Sect. The incident grew so significant that even members of the subsect such as Yi Lan and Zhen Qin came to find Guan, fearing he might get dragged into it. The Sheng family is truly ruthless, to actually poison someone. Tiske, even the subsect is discussing this now. Wuju is regarded as a top genius of the Supreme Sect, yet he lacks a family background. If this matter isn't handled well, those disciples without a family background will feel disheartened, Zhen Qin remarked astonishingly. Yi Lan was rather calm, saying, "Which sect could maintain peace over hundreds of years? There's always some troublemaker. Sword Venerable Fudao hasn't appeared for many years, it might be that the nobles are testing his attitude." Holding a book, Guan focused his divine thought on the distant ocean. The deep-sea dragon carp was being pursued by a group of demon creatures in grave danger. This guy too had gone through 81 difficulties, just one short of completion. Zhen Qin tossed her hair casually and said, "Let them create chaos, it's about time." Guan looked at her and asked, "How about you? Have you been dealing with the ghost mother of ephemera lately?" Upon hearing the name Ghost Mother of Ephemera, Zhen Qin's smile vanished and she snorted, "I'm no match for her. I can't trouble Senior Jiang anymore, I can only cultivate first." Fueled by her hatred for Su Han, Zhen Qin's zeal in cultivation remained high, which also made her innate reincarnation skills quite effective. "That's good, it's not easy for Jiang Qiong either. After saving you, she must be feeling quite awkward facing her own deputy sect master." Guan continued her thoughts. Zhen Qin nodded, then changed the subject. "I heard from a master that the Yuanshu ancestor truly opened up a reincarnation realm right in the heavens, but who really knows what reincarnation is like?" Speaking of reincarnation, Guan thought of Xiaochuan, who had been in the reincarnation vortex for a long time without reincarnating, at least within the great heavenly spirit land. Guan temporarily couldn't track his destruction Dao seal. Could he have reincarnated into another great heaven and earth? Is a divine thought true immortal that powerful? If there really is a reincarnation, I'm quite looking forward to it, just afraid that in reality, there is no reincarnation. If every person is reincarnated, then where did the original souls come from? Yilan raised a question. The two women began to explore the subject of reincarnation, intentionally avoiding the topic of Wuju. Guan chimed in occasionally and time passed quickly. As evening approached, the two women left. Guan then departed from the Third Medicine Valley, first heading to Mystic Valley, planning to stay for an ancient hour before heading to Hidden Spirit Palace. Upon arriving in Mystic Valley, he saw disciples gathered together, listening to an older disciple talking about the Sheng family, with Jiang Shi standing in front of a tree, also listening intently. The issue with the Sheng family had become so explosive that disciples from every tier were discussing it. The reason those disciples went mad was not actually related to the Sheng family, it was Guan who used the power of cause and effect to torment those disciples, continually making them witness the tragedy of that Sheng family genius. Over time, unable to escape the illusion realm, they had collapsed. As for revealing the truth about the Wuju, it was also guided by Guan using the power of cause and effect. At this very moment, the Sheng family was in turmoil, the higher-ups were overwhelmed, discussing how to handle the situation. Guan walked towards his disciples and joined them to watch the excitement and discuss. Upon seeing Guan, Jiang Shi immediately sat down, behaving very cautiously. Decades had passed and he still looked forward to cultivating with Guan. Even though he had reached the core formation realm, he had no thought of leaving Mystic Valley. The more this was the case, the less Guan wanted to accept him. He had deduced Jiang Shi's karma and found no great cultivator plotting, which made Guan even more uneasy. Why had Jiang Shi set his sights on him? Could it be the workings of the heavenly Tao setting him up for a calamity? Jiang Shi didn't know what Guan was thinking. He stayed in Mystic Valley because he feared being pursued by the Imperial family and the Li family. Without the strength to protect himself, he didn't want to leave Mystic Valley. As for Guan, although he felt that this master was no ordinary person, he didn't think in the direction of Sword Venerable Fudao. To him, Sword Venerable Fudao was just a vague legend. Except for Lu Jiujia, all Mystic Valley disciples in their lifetime had never seen Sword Venerable Fudao act. They harbored doubts, suspecting that Sword Venerable Fudao might not even exist. After a long chat, Guan finally stood up and left, and the disciples dispersed. Watching Guan disappear into the forest, Jiang Shi turned his head and quickly went to Lu Jujia's side, whispering, "Senior brother, where is Master going so late? Why is he always going out?" He had been puzzled by this for 100 years and had long wanted to ask. Lu Jujia glanced at him and said, "Mind less about where your master goes." Jiang Shi hastily apologized. Lu Jujia paid him no more attention and walked towards his own house. Once seated cross-legged on his bed, he gazed out at the bright moon, a look of melancholy in his eyes. Lately, he had been increasingly feeling weak, a tiredness beyond words, always feeling that once he closed his eyes, his life would be over. He began to understand that the so-called imminent end could indeed be perceived. His days might be numbered, and he needed to think about how to settle his affairs. If he were to die, who should he leave the position of eldest disciple to, who could serve his senior brothers as well as he did? He immediately ruled out Jiang Shi. He wouldn't choose a disciple his senior brother disliked for his position. On the other hand, Guan arrived at the hidden spirit palace and saw that the deep-sea dragon carp had finally escaped danger, hiding in a cave under the sea. After confirming it was safe, it fainted. "You escaped a calamity, let your final journey be easy," Guan murmured to himself, then flicked his hand, sending a spell through the sea in a way incomprehensible to mortal spirits, entering the body of the deep-sea dragon carp to help it recover from its injuries and regain its demonic power. Afterward he began picking medicinal herbs. After picking the medicinal herbs he didn't leave. Instead he stayed in the hidden spirit palace and read. The hidden spirit palace housed a great collection of books, all of which were his prized possessions. When he wanted to be alone he would come here. Chapter 388. The strongest immortal dynasty. The night deepened, and the hidden spirit palace, located at the depths of the sea floor, fell into tranquility. Guan lay on a chair, holding a book in one hand, while occasionally the sound of the ocean's tides and the cries of mysterious demon beasts echoed in his ears, like a symphony that brought peace to his mind. Time rapidly slipped away in such an atmosphere. Guan set his book aside, stood up, stretched lazily, and looked outside the hidden spirit palace, where he saw the deep-sea dragon carp again embarking on the journey to find the hidden spirit palace. There should be no problem with the journey ahead, as there were no formidable demon creatures blocking the path. Guan watched for a while, then left the hidden spirit palace and returned to the supreme sect. The case of Wu Ju was still the most prominent concern within the supreme sect, with many righteous hearts demanding that the sect thoroughly investigate the reasons behind the madness of those disciples, and if their claims were true, Wu Ju must be granted justice. How could other disciples not panic when even a talent like Wu Ju could be slandered, suppressed, or even potentially killed? This was happening right beside them. There were even disciples who publicly called out in the intersect city, seeking to rally the sense of justice in other disciples, holding the Righteousness and Demons written by Pan In, a book that documented the Sword Venerable Fudeo's efforts to quell internal strife within the supreme sect. With this book in hand, even the disciples from the law enforcement hall dared not apprehend him. While Guan used his divine thought to observe the disciples' public address, he walked into the third Medicine Valley. Some disciples had already introduced the issue to the Medicine Valley, prompting other disciples to join in discussions. The storm was growing bigger. This pleased Guan. Perhaps the higher-ups were worried that this matter would bring unrest to the supreme sect, but Guan was not afraid. He had feelings for the supreme sect and did not wish to see it become the sect of a single family, especially since this family was a newcomer from overseas. Wasn't this like a dove taking over a magpie's nest? Now it remained to be seen how the supreme sect would confront the pressure from the disciples. Guan did not join in the discussions of the disciples and returned to his attic alone. On the other side, within a dimly lit hall, LV Badian, Jianghu, and three great cultivators sat around a long table looking very grim. These three great cultivators were from the venerable pavilion of the supreme sect, which towered above the Hall of Elders. Despite years of development and foreign forces diluting the power of various halls within the supreme sect, the venerable pavilion remained under the control of the original families, which was their bottom line. Gu Gua took a deep breath and said, "The situation has escalated beyond concealment, it's time to put pressure on the Xing family." The aged Ji Hengshi stroked his beard and said, "Indeed, pressure must be applied, but the question is how. Sheng Qianzong is already furious and even hopes that we defend the image of the Xing family." The venerable who replaced Zhou Yu, coming from the LV family and named LV Lai, had a gloomy face and remained silent. LV Badian glanced at LV Lai with a flicker of displeasure in his eyes. Jianghu, known for his explosive temper and inability to hold back, glared at the three venerables and said, "At this point we should stop passing the buck around. We are all in this together, and if the supreme sect does nothing, we will be the first to suffer. If we don't suppress the Sheng family now, other families will certainly trample over us." His attitude was starkly different from when he faced Guan, fearing at that time that Guan would be exposed to the Sheng family. If only Sword Venerable Fudao could take action, how wonderful that would be? LV Lai suddenly spoke up. LV Badian glared at him and said, "What, should we disturb him over such a trivial matter? Have you forgotten his current status? He is now the holy sword of the holy court. Even the colossal Star Sea congregations appear insignificant before him." LV Lai shook his head and remained silent. Gu Gua pondered, "Investigate the Sheng family thoroughly. This is a good opportunity. It's rare for the Sheng family to make a mistake, and we can use this to suppress the influence of other overseas families. Think carefully, How could those disciples be driven mad by the Sheng family? Even if it were true, the Sheng family would never let them out. The talent of Wu Ju is no small matter, and he rose from humble beginnings. Throughout history, where have there been so many strokes of luck? Anyone who rises from obscurity has surely the backing of a great power behind them. Jianghu looked at Gu Gua with brightened eyes and asked, "Do you mean that Wu Ju has the support of Sword Venerable Fudao behind him?" Gu Gua replied, "It's not impossible. Think about it, the Supreme Sect is not some geomantic treasure land. Who among the past geniuses wasn't related to him? He wouldn't care about the small affairs of the Supreme Sect, but he would definitely step in if it involved the overall spirit of the sect. This group of disciples who inexplicably went mad is the best proof." Upon hearing this, everyone fell silent. The shadows on their faces gradually dispersed. If they had the support of Sword Venerable Fudao, what was there to fear? Perhaps he is also watching our actions. If we, Gu Gua continued, leaving his sentence unfinished, but everyone understood his implication. Following his train of thought, the others were shocked and felt a chill run down their spines. Jianghu slammed the table and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's do it now. I'll take the lead." With that, he disappeared from the room in an instant. The rest looked at each other, and Jianghu gave a wry smile. Will his temperament ever change? Change? Maybe in the next lifetime. I'm off as well. LV Badian laughed and stood up to leave, vanishing as well. The three Venerable Pavilion members did not linger long, vanishing from their seats simultaneously. An hour later, a piece of news shook the Supreme Sect. The Venerable Pavilion ordered a thorough investigation of the Sheng family and deployed a large number of disciples to surround the Sheng family's residence. As soon as this news came out, cheers erupted in the cities of the Supreme Sect. The truth had yet to be verified, but the Sheng family's reputation had already soured. This was because other disciples who had been oppressed by the Sheng family were also exerting their influence, spreading word of their high-handed behavior. In the evening, Guan sensed the breath of battle emanating from the main city of sect, but it quickly faded. The one who had made a move was the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord. LV Badian personally went to invite the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, who himself held the position of an elder and thus was not afraid of the Sheng family. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord had intervened, moved by what LV Badian had said, for LV Badian hinted that Sword Venerable Fudao was secretly observing this farce. Guan did not mind the Venerable Pavilion using his influence as leverage. After all, it was the truth. Moreover, without giving them some confidence to forcefully confront the Sheng family, it would have been difficult. What Guan wanted was their stance. That night was destined to be restless. When the sunlight of the following day streaked across the entire Supreme Sect, many legends had already spread among the populace. 2 days later, the Supreme Sect posted a declaration, revealing the cause and consequences of Wu Ju's case, clearing his name. It also informed the disciples that the Sheng family too was unaware of the truth, deeming it all a misunderstanding. Although many disciples were dissatisfied, wanting to directly topple the Sheng family, the Supreme Sect would not abandon a noble family over this affair, especially since the deceased was a genius of the Sheng family. Wu Ju came to find Guan as soon as he was released, expressing his gratitude. "Me? I had nothing to do with it. I spoke up for you and ended up getting lectured by the sect leader and the vice-sect leader," said Guan, shaking his head while he poured Wu Ju some tea. Wu Ju showed a smile and said, "They're only scolding you because they're worried you might get into trouble. They're probably just trying to stabilize you first while they prepare the evidence." He felt that the frenzy among the disciples was stirred up by the likes of LV Badian and others, who dared not openly claim it was the intention of Sword Venerable Fudao. Faced with numerous speculations, they neither denied nor acknowledged. Guan huffed, "Who knows what they're thinking? But as long as you're cleared of the charges, I'm happy. We must drink joyously all day and night today, you can't run away." Wu Ju laughed, "With your cultivation level and mine, you think you can outdrink me?" After this ordeal, he had gained clarity about many people and events. He did not harbor resentment but swore to become stronger and to repay Guan. A noble family, huh? If that was the case, then I too must become a noble family. Holding his bowl of wine, Wu Ju thought to himself as he looked at Guan's smiling face. He also wanted to become Guan's support as a way to repay him. Guan didn't know what he was thinking, but regardless, it didn't matter to him. The issue with the Sheng family was in his eyes no issue at all. Helping Wu Ju had many methods. Choosing this way simply added a bit of fun and anticipation to life. Guan turned his gaze towards the window. A gale had begun to blow outside as if the world was on the brink of great upheaval. Compared to the grand trend of the world, the Supreme Sect's minor incidents were insignificant. The Immortal Dynasty was poised to make new moves. Lately, Guan had sensed the return of many existences above the Immortal Tao fifth layer heaven to the great heavenly spirit land, all of them spirits from the Immortal Dynasty. Although the Holy Court had not welcomed a large influx of powerful individuals, they were clearly strengthening their positions in every domain. It seemed that the Magic Battle Conference had not brought long-term peace but had given the Immortal Dynasty greater hope. Beneath a night sky sprinkled with dazzling stars, atop a colossal palace with no ceiling, the Yangxian Emperor was meditating below a golden light sphere, eyes closed, hands continually casting spells. A figure appeared above the grand hall, the ancient Immortal Emperor. The ancient Immortal Emperor, frowning slightly, asked, "Do you truly intend to break through by force? With your talent you would surely surpass me. Why can't you be a bit more patient?" Without opening his eyes, the Yangxian Emperor replied, "It's not that this emperor lacks patience, but Xingtian isn't giving this emperor a chance. If we let him succeed in his tribulation crossing, the Immortal Dynasty will no longer exist. His talent, as you know, is clear. The realm you could not traverse he will surely reach, it's just a matter of when." The ancient Immortal Emperor said, "The reincarnation tribulation is not that simple. Do you want to gamble the fate of the Immortal Dynasty on his failure? Or bet that it will take him 1,000,000, 10,000,000 years?" The ancient Immortal Emperor fell silent at Yangxian Emperor's retort. Soon after, the Yangxian Emperor opened his eyes and looked toward the distant cosmos, saying, "Moreover, the Yuanshu ancestor did not open the paths of reincarnation without merit. What comes next will be the most potent period in the history of the Immortal Dynasty. All those supreme beings will return to fight alongside this emperor." Excitement appeared on his face, unable to wait for a battle with the Holy Court. The ancient Immortal Emperor watched him and said, "Then how do you plan to break through? You don't think the Holy Court would be so arrogant as to allow you to break through, do you? If the Saint Ancestor does not make a move, I too must refrain, or else the situation will spin even further out of control." The Yangxian Emperor shook his head and said, "You need not worry, for this emperor has his own plans. I would even hope for them to try to stop my tribulation crossing. It would give me a justified cause to gain the upper hand." Chapter 389. Do you know what my cultivation level is? As autumn gave way to winter, the snow gradually blanketed the vast Taizong continent. Guan, wearing a mask, sat on the eaves, gazing up at the sky while Sage Xianmiao in the courtyard below, engaged in alchemy and curiously watched Guan. The mountain god seemed engrossed in something, having been watching for quite some time. Sage Xianmiao silently thought, yearning for the perspective of the mountain god. The scenery before the mountain god's eyes surely transcended imagination. Could something be happening beyond the heavens? Sage Xianmiao guessed right. Indeed, something was happening outside the heaven, and it was an event of great importance to the world. Guan saw a host of immortal spirits arranging a grand formation in the cosmos. The scale was so immense that even the silhouettes of two divine thought true immortals could be discerned, sitting cross-legged above the formation, their auras completely unhidden. Someone was about to break through. With such an array, it seemed likely that a divine thought true immortal was attempting to advance to a free immortal. Guan could not calculate precisely who it was. The Immortal Dynasty was protected by chi fortune that obscured cause and effect. Of course, given time he could figure it out, yet to know or not held little significance because divine thought true immortals were scarce, and as for free immortals, currently, there was only one in each domain. There were only 2 acknowledged free immortals in the entire visible great heavenly spirit land. Guan stood up, looking down at Sage Xianmiao and said, "Great changes are coming to the world. Cultivate diligently and do not be lazy." Having said that, he vanished into thin air from the eaves. The world is about to change? Sage Xianmiao frowned. What kind of calamity would it take for the mountain god to speak of a great change? Elsewhere. In one step, Guan arrived inside the hidden spirit palace, his gaze directed outside the barrier, where the deep-sea dragon carp lingered nearby. After previously bumping into the barrier and confirming the location of the hidden spirit palace, it did not seem in a hurry. Instead, it idly circled the barrier's vicinity, making not a single sound. Guan stepped onto the open space in front of the hidden spirit palace gate, raising his right foot, and immediately after, the deep-sea dragon carp appeared right under his foot. The deep-sea dragon carp was stunned, its fish-eyed gaze widening. This time, It did not struggle but instead watched Guan calmly and steadily. "Do you have a death wish? Speak, steamed or grilled?" Guan asked expressionlessly, looking down at it. The fish eyes of the deep-sea dragon carp turned teary once again. None of the hardships and dangers it had encountered on its journey had humiliated it as much as being before Guan, where it had cried twice. Guan's heart remained unsoftened. After a moment's thought, the primordial divine eye appeared on his forehead, shooting out a beam of golden light into the body of the deep-sea dragon carp. The deep-sea dragon carp shivered as its body stiffened. After a few breaths, as if sensing something, it cautiously asked, "Are you an immortal?" It spoke with a human voice, sounding like a young boy full of childishness. Guan did not move his foot, asking, "Whether I am or not, what does it have to do with you? Immortal, will you take me in? I will submit to you as my master, just teach me divine skills and I will obey you forever." The deep-sea dragon carp pleaded with tears, its tone brimming with misery that would tug at one's heartstrings. "Why should I take you in? Please, I beg you, how did you hear of Immortal's legends at the bottom of the sea? Since I was little, I've had many memories that are not my own, likely passed down by my ancestors. I have seen the descent of Immortals and they look just like you. I am human and the human race exists in this world. No, you are different from the human race. You give me the same feeling as those Immortals." Hearing this, Guan narrowed his eyes, directly employing the great imprisoned soul immortal technique to search through its memories. The eyes of the deep-sea dragon carp lost their luster, appearing as if dead, and it even began to blow bubbles from its mouth. After a long while, Guan withdrew his divine thought, his expression peculiar. There actually were immortals. In the memories of the deep-sea dragon carp, that was a very ancient time, and Guan could not determine how long ago it was through its memories because its bloodline memories were intermittent. The immortals in its memory were undoubtedly beings beyond the 9 heavens of immortal path. There were 5 in total, descending from the heavens, casting mysterious crystal stones into the Jianghu. That was the only fragment, yet the vision was clear. It demonstrated that the ancestor of the deep-sea dragon carp cherished this memory deep in their bones, unwilling to forget. Guan recalculated, verifying that the deep-sea dragon carp indeed had no other significant karma, before he felt at ease. He gently kicked the deep-sea dragon carp, jolting it awake. Without Guan's suppression, the deep-sea dragon carp suddenly soared upward, floating midair. The deep-sea dragon carp looked at Guan timidly, very nervous. "I can take you in, but are you sure you are willing to give up your freedom for eternity?" Guan asked. The deep-sea dragon carp, overwhelmed with joy, eagerly nodded and said, "I am willing. As long as I can cultivate with you, as long as I can become an immortal, I am willing." "Become an immortal? You'll have to prove your worth first." Guan cast a disparaging glance at the deep-sea dragon carp, then began to introduce it to the situation at Hidden Spirit Palace. The deep-sea dragon carp listened intently, fearful of disappointing Guan. After finishing his instructions, Guan told it to stay put for the time being and that he would teach it cultivation technique later, then he went back to the supreme sect. The deep-sea dragon carp turned its head to look at Hidden Spirit Palace, its fish eyes shining brightly, filled with exuberant excitement. After decades of hardship, the sweet payoff had finally arrived. 13 years later. In the dead of night, Guan stood atop a peak at the edge of Mystic Valley, toying with the fate-determining pen in his hand while gazing at the night sky. The lord of the Immortal Dynasty, Jianghu Emperor, was about to undergo tribulation. The cosmos had gathered tens of thousands of mighty immortal spirits. Even the weakest among them was of the wandering immortal realm, and that was not the entirety of the Immortal Dynasty's power. Merely witnessing it was enough to make anyone marvel at the dynasty's strength. Above the outer layers of light, cultivators of the great heavenly spirit land from various great sects stood, discussing the unparalleled might of the Immortal Dynasty. They knew the Immortal Dynasty was formidable, but only today did they truly understand the extent of its strength. Most pivotal was that the Holy Court showed no reaction, as if indifferent to the tribulation of the Immortal Dynasty Lord. What kind of terrifying heavenly tribulation is this? Such a dreadful aura, the number of heaven and earth flying immortals of the Immortal Dynasty seems to surpass the combined forces here. What do you think allows the Immortal Dynasty to stand against the Holy Court? The Immortal Dynasty is quite ambitious. Why does it seem like the Holy Court is wary of them? The disciples from the various sects, including those from Mortal World Peak, discussed such matters and Guan listened in. The Holy Court was not wary of the Immortal Dynasty. They were clearly waiting for the right moment. Guan could sense that within one of the holy court cities, a vast number of divine immortals of wondrous dharma and carefree primordial immortals were gathering, evidently preparing for something. He had predicted a great battle where some of the cultivators from the layers above would fail to escape in time and be obliterated on the spot. This calamity would also impact the great heavenly spirit land, causing earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and other disasters across various domains. For many years to come, Taitsong continent would suffer its influence, and countless living beings would face challenging times. Guan had no intention of intervening. Such tribulation would not affect his Medicine Valley. As for the common folk, they would attribute these hard times to natural disasters, unaware of the high-level conflict. While the immortal cultivation world could understand what was happening, they too would be swept up in the turmoil of conflict. If the Holy Court's control was shaken, the world order would encounter an upheaval not seen in a million years. Yang Xian Emperor. Interesting indeed, quite a remarkable figure. Guan mused to himself, envisioning Yang Xian Emperor's imposing dominance in the years to come, casting a shadow of dark times over the Holy Court until the emergence of Xingtian. However, he could not predict where Xingtian would be. There were many like Ji Xiaoyu in this world, burdened with the karma of reincarnation, making it difficult to deduce past lives through such karma, thus challenging to discern which one might be the Saint Heaven reincarnation. Perhaps Xingtian wasn't even in the great heavenly spirit land. Just as Guan was contemplating the future, a set of footsteps approached from behind. The newcomer was Jianghu. He cautiously approached Guan, and seeing that his master's eyes were not closed, he mustered the courage to ask, "Master, you've been here for such a long time, is there anything you need? Let me prepare it for you." Guan, without looking at him, answered softly, "Then prepare some wine and dishes." Jianghu, elated upon hearing this, quickly bowed and turned to make the arrangements. Guan wasn't too repelled by Jianghu's eagerness. After all, the boy had performed well over the years, truly focusing on his practice. The lad had already reached the core formation realm, only one realm below him, the Valley Master. With his talent, becoming the disciple of a great cultivator in the unification realm would not be difficult. Before long, Jianghu returned with wine and dishes, along with a small table. Guan accepted the wine Jianghu poured and in a seemingly indifferent tone asked, "Jianghu, do you know what my cultivation level is?" Jianghu paused for a moment, deliberating, then answered, "The senior brothers mentioned that you had reached the nascent soul realm many years ago. Actually, I am a loose immortal," Guan suddenly declared, leaving Jianghu with widened eyes filled with disbelief. Under Jianghu's stunned gaze, Guan raised his hand and the clouds above swiftly churned, forming a majestic dragon coiling through the sky. After a few breaths, Guan withdrew his hand, and the spectacle in the night sky vanished, returning to its original state. Jianghu was dumbfounded, doubting what he had just seen. When Guan lifted his hand again, Jianghu felt the world spin. Upon opening his eyes once more, he trembled with fright. Guan had become gigantic like a mountain, and he realized he was standing in the palm of Guan's hand. At that moment, Jianghu suddenly understood how Sun Wukong felt in the palm of the Buddha. Guan looked down at him expressionlessly and asked, "Do you now regret staying in Mystic Valley?" "No one knows of my cultivation level. Those who did are no longer alive." Jianghu immediately knelt down, head bowed, not daring to look directly at Guan. Clenching his teeth, he declared, "No regrets. To be your disciple is the fortune of 3 lifetimes." His mind was in turmoil, and he had never anticipated Guan to be so formidable. All he could do was to desperately try to please Guan, and he was extremely fearful. After all, Guan had previously taken a dislike to him. Would he simply kill him now? He suddenly regretted coming up to the mountain to ingratiate himself with his master. But wait, if his master wanted to kill him, why go through such an elaborate display? As Jianghu pondered this, his uneasy heart slowly calmed down. An approving glint passed through the eyes of Guan observing him. Even though the lad had made mistakes, he was not unforgivable. Lu Jujia's time was drawing near, and it might well be time to cultivate him. The reason for Guan's change of heart toward Jianghu was the latter's unwavering dedication over decades to stay in Mystic Valley. He knew what Jianghu feared, but that was not important. What mattered was Jianghu's ability to remain seated in meditation, unlike Yang Jian, who sought to venture out upon gaining strength. Chapter 390, Displaying Divine Skills at Dawn. Guan emerged from the forest, followed by Jianghu, whose expression was somewhat bewildered. Lu Jiujia, who was organizing the disciples for training, turned his head and noticed Jianghu following Guan, which sparked surprise within him. This young man actually dares to seek out his senior brother? In his heart, Lu Jiujia lamented, seeing that Jianghu clearly looked defeated. Guan continued on, joining the ranks of the disciples in preparation for training. Lu Jiujia did not ask Jianghu for details but urged him to join the queue quickly as the training was about to start. An hour later, Guan left Mystic Valley, and only then did Lu Jiujia dare to pull Jianghu back to the house to ask about what had happened the night before. Under the control of Guan's divine thought, the disciples in the valley were unable to perceive the disturbances of the previous night and even failed to sense the approach of Guan and Jianghu's energies. Facing Lu Jiujia's inquiry, Jianghu shook his head and said, "Senior brother, don't ask. Rest assured I am fine. I will devote myself to building up Mystic Valley and won't let you or Master down." After hearing this, Lu Jiujia felt uneasy. Why did it seem that this young man had grown closer to his senior brother? Even closer than him. Lu Jiujia thought it over and figured, since he didn't have many years left to live, wasn't this situation what he had hoped for? He respected Guan and treated Jianghu like a son, naturally hoping for a closer relationship between the two. "Perform well, your master will take note," Lu Jiujia said solemnly as he patted Jianghu on the shoulder. Jianghu nodded, his eyes blazing with a fire named combativeness. After the summer had passed, the Yangxian Emperor officially began his tribulation crossing. Guan stayed in the attic of the Third Medicine Valley, beginning to watch the Divine Thought True Immortal's tribulation crossing. He wanted to see if the heavenly tribulation of the Yangxian Emperor could match his own. As soon as the heavenly tribulation began, he was disappointed. It seemed not very strong. As a Divine Thought True Immortal realm being, he could have easily crossed it. While he was disappointed, the heaven and earth flying immortals in the exterior layers of sky shuddered with fear. Even from a great distance, they could feel the terror of the heavenly tribulation. What kind of heavenly tribulation is this? So far away and yet the pressure is still so terrifying? Which level of the immortal path's heavenly tribulation could this be? All I know is that from the 5th to the 6th level, the heavenly tribulation is nowhere near as frightening, and this is just the beginning. Could this tribulation affect the great heavenly spirit land? The immortal dynasty is truly formidable. The pressure we feel is just the residual effect. Look at their formations, how profound. The heaven and earth flying immortals discussed among themselves. Then, the carefree primordial immortal and the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma began to arrive. As time passed, the heavenly tribulation of the Yangxian Emperor grew increasingly terrifying. From the beginning of the heavenly tribulation, Guan could foresee the result. Even at its strongest, the tribulation could not shake his physique from when he was in the Divine Thought True Immortal realm. If he were to undergo the Yangxian Emperor's heavenly tribulation, he would surely succeed on his first try. This heavenly tribulation would last a total of 7 days. The next day, the sky emitted a red glow, akin to a burning cloud. The cultivators of the Supreme Sect merely thought it beautiful without giving it much thought. The same was true for 90% of the beings under the sky. On the 3rd day, the temperature of heaven and earth suddenly rose, and the spiritual energy became violent, forcing many cultivators who were in seclusion to emerge, with some even being invaded by inner demons. On the 4th day, earthquakes and tsunamis began to occur all around the world, which the Supreme Sect couldn't ignore. On the 5th day, the Holy Court took action. Guan saw a multitude of Holy Court powerhouses shot towards the cosmos like a rain of arrows. Their mana converged together, forming a formidable force that struck the great immortal dynasty's formation with an unstoppable momentum. The tremendous aftermath shattered many stars and meteorites in the cosmos, and then surged towards the great heavenly spirit land. The scenario Guan had deduced occurred. Some heaven and earth flying immortals turned to ash on the spot, and the entire great heavenly spirit land was shaken. The great immortal dynasty's formation was broken in an instant. However, dazzling flames burst forth from Yangxian Emperor's body, brighter and more massive than even the 7 outer days, radiating endless scorching heat. Yangxian Emperor raised his hand and astonishingly repelled tens of thousands of Holy Court powerhouses with a single move, including 5 Divine Thought True Immortals. Not only that, Guan saw divine spirits with powerful auras flying out from the reincarnation vortex, all of whom were Divine Thought True Immortals and Tao Void Mysterious Immortals. The origins of these divine spirits were extremely bizarre, untraceable, almost as if they weren't living spirits but came from the 9 netherworld. They did not go to aid Yangxian Emperor but instead headed toward the Holy Dynasty. A world-shaking war thus erupted. In the ensuing time, Guan saw divine thought true immortals battling in the cosmos, Tao void mysterious immortals fighting within the Tao realm, and divine immortals of wondrous dharma and carefree primordial immortals dueling in states unobservable by ordinary beings. The holy gods joined the fight. All the holy gods of the holy court were divine thought true immortals. Each of their arrivals resembled immortals descending to the mortal world, majestic and awe-inspiring. Guan was indeed riveted by what he saw, but of course he didn't forget his own identity, and he would also pretend to be worried when around others. On the seventh day, Yangxian Emperor had advanced to the free immortal realm in full splendor. A violent storm approached. Under the pavilion, Ji Xiaoyu looked up at the rolling thunderclouds, her brow tightly furrowed. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor suddenly appeared beside her, sighing, "This is the Six Realms' destiny ultimate void tribulation. This Yangxian Emperor is truly a rare genius in history, not inferior to Xingtian. Having two prodigies from the same era in a single great heaven and earth is terrifying. It's fortunate that they are adversaries." Upstairs, Guan heard this and his expression turned odd. The Six Realms' destiny ultimate void tribulation? When he had broken through to the Tao void mysterious immortal realm previously, his heavenly tribulation was called the Six Realms' destiny ultimate void tribulation, 3 realms more than what Yangxian Emperor is facing now. Did this represent a higher level of difficulty? Ji Xiaoyu spoke, "Indeed, if there were stronger beings in the great heavenly spirit land to guide them to unite, then this land could soar. Sadly, there are no such supreme beings here, destined to have only one prodigy survive. From what we see now, I believe Xingtian will have the last laugh." The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor showed a smile, saying, "I, on the other hand, think Yangxian Emperor has more hope. The Holy Court entered the reincarnation tribulation later than your Majesty, and by the time Yangxian Emperor unifies the great heavenly spirit land, he might not be able to escape from his tribulation." After hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu did not continue the conversation, her gaze firmly fixed on the sky. With a loud bang, a bolt of thunder appeared in the sky, resembling a giant dragon, spectacular to behold. "I, Yangxian Emperor, ruler of the Immortal Dynasty, proclaim my ascension to the 9 heavens of immortal path. How dare the Holy Court obstruct my tribulation crossing? From this day forth, the Immortal Dynasty declares total war on the Holy Court. In this war only one shall remain." The voice of Yangxian Emperor resounded, his tone mixed with towering rage, and the most profound part was that only beings of the Immortal Path realm could hear it, inaudible to mortal spirits. Guan couldn't help but admire. This guy's acting was also very strong. Clearly, he had been deliberately waiting for the Holy Court to make a move. The Holy Court had no choice but to act, unable to watch the birth of a free immortal in the Immortal Dynasty. Their failure to act this time meant that the Holy Court was defeated by the Immortal Dynasty twice. Guan was full of anticipation for the future. As the great chaos commenced worldwide, continuously more suicidal attackers would invade the Taizong continent, and he hadn't taken action in a long while, eager to display his divine skills. Chapter 391 Acceptance. After the Yangxian Emperor's furious proclamation resonated throughout the world, the epic of great strife was officially unveiled. The successful breakthrough of the Yangxian Emperor led to his arrival at Holy Court, followed closely by other powerhouses of the Immortal Dynasty, who launched an unprecedented offensive against the Holy Court. However, with its robust Qi fortune, Holy Court managed to form a formation out of Qi fortune, blocking the offensive of the Free Immortals, which amazed Guan greatly. The way of Qi fortune was extremely versatile, no less than the way of cause and effect. To be precise, each of the 3,000 great Tao had its unique excellence, without an absolute strength or weakness, depending on the practitioner's achievement in their respective Tao. Ultimately, Holy Court withstood the Yangxian Emperor's assault, forcing him to retreat and return to the Immortal Dynasty to begin a seclusion. Although Holy Court survived, this battle came with severe losses, causing powers scattered across the world to start contracting. When sects throughout the world saw that Holy Court was not as invincible as imagined, many began to stir. Who didn't want to become the Holy Court? They were only submitting to the overwhelming might of Holy Court, not genuinely loyal from the heart. In the coming autumn, the entire great heavenly spirit land plunged into turbulence. In the late autumn, Guan, accompanied by an ex-in, arrived at Mortal World Peak, quickly sensing the tense atmosphere enveloping the peak. The world was in chaos, with sects and dynasties watching. Choosing sides was necessary even without ambition. This was an unprecedented major upheaval in millions of years, making all forces quite cautious. After picking medicinal herbs on Dingtian Peak, Zhu Xinglan found Guan and informed him that the main peak had summoned him to attend a peak master meeting. Guan did not refuse and set off. All divine peak masters were present, and upon Guan's arrival, he received goodwill from many peak masters. After all, in their eyes, Guan was a being that even surpassed the carefree primordial immortal, so naturally they wanted to forge an affiliation. Once all divine peak lords were assembled, Lord Yongyin began to elaborate on the situation of mortal world peak, with Holy Court hoping for their support to jointly attack the territories affiliated with the Immortal dynasty. The Immortal dynasty pressed their victory and rapidly expanded after suppressing Holy Court, showing a ferocious momentum of swallowing the celestial sphere. Now Lord Yongyin wanted to discuss whether to support Holy Court, and if so, how. Guan did not participate in the discussion, merely listening quietly. The vast majority of peak masters believed they should not rashly support Holy Court, their perception shaken by the formidable power of the Immortal dynasty, especially the Yangxian Emperor, who demonstrated the world's top prowess amidst the mysterious disappearance of Xingtian. How dare they support Holy Court when the world's foremost stands with the Immortal dynasty? Guan did not look down on them. In fact, their conjecture was correct. Without Xingtian, it was impossible for the two free immortals of the Immortal dynasty to be defeated. The peak master meeting lasted an ancient hour, and in the end they decided to agree to Holy Court's request, but to discuss later when to take action. Guan returned to Dingtian Peak and guided an Xin in her cultivation. Only when evening fell did the two return to the Supreme Sect. Walking in the woods outside Mystic Valley, Guan observed Zhu Shi while moving forward. "Master, who do you think will have the last laugh between the Immortal dynasty and Holy Court?" An Xin excitedly asked, following closely by Guan's side. She wasn't afraid of a major conflict between the two great powers. She believed her master could protect her. It's hard to say, but one thing is certain, this calamity will last a long time. Guan responded casually, his tone calm as if he placed no importance on the matter. An Xin then asked how powerful the Yangxian Emperor truly was, having heard many disciples of Mortal World Peak discussing him today, calling him the strongest of this era, the pinnacle of the immortal path. Very powerful, very powerful. Even with Hauer's talent, reaching that level would need hundreds of thousands of years. Guan's response astounded an Xin. Hundreds of thousands of years. After the shock, an Xin fell into boundless speculation. Would she still be alive after hundreds of thousands of years? Her gaze involuntarily turned towards her master. For her master to mention hundreds of thousands of years so casually, to him, would hundreds of thousands of years be like 10 years or even 1 year to ordinary people? Anyway, she felt that no matter how strong the Yangxian Emperor was, he couldn't be as formidable as her master. Guan didn't know what she was thinking, but when he saw Zhu Shi pretending innocence after stealing medicinal herbs and sobbing in front of her master, he almost laughed. Given time, the Tai Chu swallowing Yuan body would surely become a supreme warrior of the world, perhaps even surpassing the Yangxian Emperor. Unfortunately, she was born too late and caught in such turbulent times, truly bad luck. Wait, could it be? Born to meet the calamity? Guan showed a look of interest and began to deduce Zhu Zai's fate. The Tai Chu swallowing Yuan Boda's fate was hard to predict, but as a Taoist hidden immortal, Guan could deduce some traces of cause and effect. As the years gently passed, with the Immortal dynasty and Holy Court entering full-scale war, the whole world burned in warfare, with far more shooting stars visible at night than ever before. Continuously, overseas cultivators fled to the Taizong continent to seek refuge, also bringing many grievances and conflicts which kept spreading. 20 years swiftly passed. At the end of summer, Guan stood shoulder to shoulder with Lu Jiujia on a cliff, gazing into the distance. Lu Jiujia had a full head of white hair, and the twilight air around him grew heavier with each passing year. The effects of the youth-preserving pill had already faded. These years the atmosphere within the Supreme Sect has truly become more tense, and even the sky above doesn't look as blue as before, always appearing gloomy, Lu Jiujia remarked with a sigh. Clouds scattered across the sky, not covering the entire sky, nor showing signs of wind or rain. Guan replied, "Yes, it really is a season full of incidents. What do you think, are we lucky or unlucky in this life? We always encounter various calamities, although we have passed through them safely under the protection of the Supreme Sect." Lu Jiujia chuckled. Naturally, we are lucky. Those seniors also thought their lives were filled with hardships. Everyone feels they weren't born in the best of times. I'm surprised you understand it so well, Guan said to Lu Jiujia, relieved. Watching as Lu Jiujia's days were numbered, he couldn't help but think of Xiaochuan. Why hasn't Xiaochuan reincarnated yet? Could it be that he reincarnated in another world? Guan thought of the Immortal dynasty summoning back so many powerful immortal spirits from the reincarnation vortex, and felt that the reincarnation vortex was not so simple. That's thanks to the good teachings of my senior brother. Besides, I won't live too many more years, and the calamities in my life are all made by myself, no one else to blame. Anyway, I am quite satisfied with this life, Lu Jiujia said, shaking his head with a wry smile. Guan snorted, how come you all have no regrets when it's time to die? Are you afraid of burdening me? He had already seen many pass away, each one departing with a smile, leaving him not too sentimental, only occasionally feeling nostalgic. Haha, senior brother, don't think too much. Is it possible that under your care we really had a good life? We have all ventured out and experienced the dangers of the world, which is why we cherish our current lives and are content with the lives we have led. You really don't need to think too much. No one should be responsible for another's life. Lu Jiujia laughed heartily, then spoke earnestly. He could tell that senior brother cared about the cultivation of those around him. He knew senior brother did not seek wealth or honor for his close ones, but rather hoped that they would live long. Guan smiled. Where am I overthinking? Actually, I am also selfish. I just don't want to end up lonely. Lu Jiujia laughed. Everyone must die eventually, it's inevitable. True, let's talk about the Great Sun Divine Sect instead. Who knows when they might attack? Really? The Broken Sea domain is under the protection of the Holy Court. Could the Great Sun Divine Sect really be stronger than the Great Cold Demon Sect of yore? Lu Jiujia frowned. Speaking of the Great Sun Divine Sect, which had been a hot topic recently, even the realm of heaven and earth flying immortal had strongly entered into the consciousness of Supreme Sect's disciples. Various rumors all pointed to one thing: the Broken Sea domain was about to face an unprecedented threat, and the Taizong dynasty situated there would find it hard to escape unscathed. Guan smiled. How about we make a bet? Guess whether the Great Sun Divine Sect can defeat Sword Venerable Fudao? Upon hearing this, Lu Jiujia instantly raised his eyebrows. I bet they are no match for Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan's smile stiffened. No, let's draw lots, decide the order of choice. I want. You itching for a spanking? Don't think just because you're old, senior brother won't dare to thrash you. Oh come on, the disciples are watching. What kind of example would that set? The prestige of the first disciple must be maintained. Don't make it difficult for the next generation's first disciple. The two began to bicker, laughter echoing endlessly. Mountains ranged in succession, and in one forested mountain, numerous pavilions nestled. A young man knelt in the courtyard, his face stubborn, his gaze fixed on the main gate. No matter how long you kneel, I will not hand over your ancestors' brocade bag to you. A woman's voice came from the gate. Why not? The young man gritted his teeth. My father and my grandfather's deep-seated vendetta, are you really going to ignore it? They are also your descendants. Exactly for that reason I cannot let you continue to risk your life. What's wrong with being immortal? Once you step into the world of immortal cultivation, no one ends well. Being immortal, when facing power, when encountering cultivators, we are just meat on the chopping block at the mercy of others. The young man's voice nearly broke at the end. The mysterious woman inside the gate fell silent. After a long while, the mysterious woman spoke softly. The bloodline of the Yin family is deeply cursed. None of your ancestors had a good ending, not even my son who did not live past 30. The deeper you cultivate, the worse the outcome, yet still, you persist? Perhaps the brocade bag left by our ancestor is meant to resolve this issue. It's useless. I don't believe it. Just give it to me, let me decide for myself, someone has to try. The young man said sternly, his body trembling because he had been kneeling for too long. Emotions stirred, his chi blood was somewhat deficient. Clang, the gate suddenly opened, a brocade bag flew out, landing in front of the young man. Overjoyed, the young man immediately picked up the brocade bag, tore it open, and took out a piece of paper, tremblingly examining it. The paper bore 2 large characters. Resign. The young man felt as if struck by lightning, his eyes widened, and he was dumbstruck. Why? The young man murmured to himself, his hands involuntarily clenched into fists, and the paper was crumpled with them. His fingernails dug into his own flesh, blood seeping out, staining the paper in his hands. Chapter 392 The Sense of Intimacy of an Yuan. Why resign oneself to fate? Why? The youth trembled all over, his eyes filled with despair. Dark clouds blanketed the sky, as if destiny obscured the sunshine of his life, leaving no sight of hope. The mysterious woman in the building did not answer, nor did she offer any comfort. She had once felt the same despair when she came across those two characters. She did not resent that man either. After all, he warned her before he left. Yet, she couldn't withstand her family's persuasion and got caught up in the disputes, leading to her descendants having to hide in the mountains, humbly lamenting the unfairness of fate. Just then, the youth suddenly felt a sharp pain in his palm, which frightened him into reflexively letting go, throwing the crumpled paper away. He instinctively looked at his palm and saw many blood-red lines appear, quite ghastly. He seemed to realize something, raised his head, and fixed his gaze on the blood-stained paper ball before scrambling over to it. He picked up the paper, unfolded it, and to his surprise found that the words "resigned to fate" had disappeared, replaced by 3 large characters. Supreme Sect. Supreme Sect, what does this mean? The youth murmured, frowning. He had certainly heard of the Supreme Sect, the legendary #1 sect above all dynasties. With his talent, how difficult it would be to enter the Supreme Sect. Suddenly, a figure appeared beside him, a woman wearing a black Taoist robe with white hair, yet a face that was young and comely. She was none other than the Princess of Tianwei, Si Yener, who had once been engaged to An Hao. She snatched the paper from the youth's hand and scrutinized the characters. Her brows furrowed tightly, her eyes filled with complex emotions. "Weren't you the one who told me not to try to ingratiate myself with that elder? Why then leave a secret message for your descendants to go to the Supreme Sect? Did you know this day would come, or were you worried about the safety of your progeny?" Si Yener mumbled to herself, her tone complex, a mix of surprise, reluctance, anger, and resentment. The youth stood up, his legs weak. It took him a while to steady his stance. "Grandmother, what does the ancestor mean? That I should go to the Supreme Sect?" he asked nervously, his eyes full of anticipation. Si Yener took a deep breath and said, "Yes, go to the Supreme Sect." The youth, overjoyed, turned to leave immediately. "Wait, do you even know where the Supreme Sect is located? How far away it is?" Si Yener suddenly called out to him. The youth turned his head and said, "The Supreme Sect is so famous, I should be able to find out by asking around. With your pace it will take 10 years to get there, by which time you might already be dead." Si Yener stared at him, saying emotionlessly. Upon hearing this, the youth's face turned pale. Si Yener turned her back and walked towards the attic, leaving behind a sentence, "Just wait, it'll take you to the Supreme Sect." The youth, with a look of delight, quickly knelt to thank Si Yener. Meanwhile, An Hao was cultivating in the Immortal dynasty, unaware of what his descendants were going through. He meditated on a cliff, facing a vast and magnificent waterfall, its thunderous roar deafening. Below was a lake as vast as the ocean, covered with a mist that made the place seem like a paradise on earth. A figure appeared behind An Hao, a woman in a white dress, gazing at him with eyes full of admiration. "An Hao, the Immortal dynasty has issued a chief fortune bounty, why don't you take part? With the support of the dynasty's chief fortune, your cultivation level will grow faster, much better than painstakingly meditating," said the woman in the white dress, her voice gentle and tender. An Hao, with his back to her, did not open his eyes, replying, "To seek the path of immortality solely through chief fortune might not be right. I believe more in the mana that I cultivate myself." The woman in the white dress smiled and said, "That's true. With your extraordinary talent, you can reach the pinnacle of the immortal path on your own. It's just a matter of time." An Hao did not respond. The only sound was the clamor of the waterfall striking the lake's surface. The woman in the white dress continued to watch An Hao, not finding it dull. After a long while, "Please return, fairy. Perhaps I misunderstood your intentions. In any case, I will never remarry in this lifetime. I once had a wife, but in pursuit of immortal cultivation, I've cut off our relationship, and I do not wish to become involved with another woman in more than just friendship." An Hao finally spoke, his tone calm but resolute. Upon hearing this, the woman's face subtly changed. She wanted to say something but couldn't as she looked at An Hao's back. She watched his silhouette for a while, eventually turning to leave. Only after she had gone did An Hao open his eyes, a look of melancholy in his gaze. "So many years have passed, are you still well?" An Hao murmured to himself. An image of a bright and playful girl appeared before him, her smile and glance, even after hundreds of years, unforgettable to him. A year later, near the Supreme Sect in the forests, Si Yener and the young man were on their way, with the young man carrying a large bundle that bent his back. He looked at his grandmother walking ahead and couldn't help asking, "Grandmother, why not teach me to cultivate instead? Otherwise I truly might die of exhaustion." When the grandmother took out a flying artifact, he was stunned, never imagining she was so powerful. He had also questioned his grandmother why she hadn't stepped in to save his grandfather, his father, to which Si Yener replied that she was too far away to intervene in time. Regarding why she didn't seek revenge, it was for his sake too. The enemy was a powerful family with an immortal in their ranks, certainly not someone she could contend with. Learning the reasons, the youth's desire to cultivate and become an immortal grew stronger. He must become powerful. "We're almost there, what need is there to cultivate now?" Si Yener's voice came from ahead. Upon hearing this, the youth was instantly overjoyed and quickly hastened his pace. He began to inquire about his ancestors' relationship with the Supreme Sect. This time Si Yener did not hide the truth. "Your ancestor, named Jianghu, was the foremost talent in the world, and now he is venturing in an even more distant realm. He is the pride of the Supreme Sect." As Si Yener spoke, a wistful expression crossed her face. She remembered Jianghu's spirited visage. She harbored no resentment for Jianghu's decision. After all, it was her own heart that had stirred first, not to mention that before leaving, Jianghu had left behind several treasures. It was for this reason that the Si family, following their downfall, could survive with her descendants. When the youth heard the name Jianghu, it seemed somewhat familiar. But as he listened to his grandmother praising him, the youth did not feel excited. Instead, his expression grew even more somber. The stronger Jianghu was, the more the youth despised him. What of it if he was the world's most talented? In his eyes, he was just a negligent forebear, probably not all that impressive. The two continued their conversation as they moved forward, with most of the speaking done by Si Yener, while the youth said very little. As they walked, figures appeared in front of them. The first to enter their sight was a man riding a demon bull, followed by a woman. Si Yener had long since sensed their presence, with one of them being a nascent soul realm cultivator, undoubtedly a disciple of the Supreme Sect. Therefore she wanted to approach these two to lead them into the Supreme Sect. She quickened her pace, with the youth following closely behind, his gaze fixed on the blood prison great saint. What a magnificent bull! Guan patted the head of the blood prison great saint, signaling it to stop. An XN turned her head to look and quickly set her sights on the youth, her brows furrowing soon after. "En Yuan, Energy Cultivation Realm, Level 117/25/5000. Guan looked at the youth's lifespan without a change in expression, but internally he felt puzzled. Why was his lifespan so short? He came here with an XN because he had calculated the arrival of Si Yener and the other person. He also predicted the plight of Jianghu's descendants, but upon truly encountering En Yuan, he was still surprised. His lifespan was unreasonably short, especially considering that there was no sign of illness. Si Yener approached an XN and with a salute of her hand said, "My name is Si Yener, from the former land of Tianwei. May I ask if you two are disciples of the Supreme Sect?" "You're called Si Yener?" And Xin's eyes widened in shock as she asked. Si Yener inquired with suspicion, "Have you heard of my name, miss?" "Of course I've heard. My senior brother mentioned you to me." "Your brother is—" Si Yener too became excited hearing Jianghu mention his sister. An XN did not conceal her identity, and upon revealing it, the two women embraced each other as if reuniting after a long parting. And Yuan stared blankly at an XN, not expecting this woman with the grace of an immortal to be his ancestor's junior sister. So young she looked about his age. "Who is this?" Si Yener turned her attention to Guan, asking with curiosity. An XN hastily introduced, "This is my master, although not the same as the one shared with my senior brother. He is my second master." Si Yener suddenly understood. She of course knew who Jianghu's master was, the renowned sword venerable Fu Dao. This fact she had not mentioned to En Yuan. Guan smiled and asked, "You aren't here looking for Jianghu, are you? He has already joined the Immortal dynasty, and even a Mahayana cultivator would need decades, even 100 years to reach the Immortal dynasty from the ends of the earth." The Immortal dynasty. Si Yener immediately lapsed into a daze. She had naturally heard this name as the Yuanshu ancestor who opened reincarnation came from the Immortal dynasty. Has he already reached such a state? Si Yener suddenly felt fortunate. Fortune that she had not been overbearing in the past. Had she clung to him in the Taizong continent, would Jianghu have achieved such greatness? "Come back to the valley with us first, we can talk more after a few days' rest." Guyan's words matched Si Yenner's intentions. She swiftly bowed in thanks and gestured for Yuan to speak. And Yuan, just coming to his senses, quickly bowed in salute. The group headed towards Mystic Valley. Xian and Si Yenner walked arm in arm at the front, while Yuan cautiously followed behind the Blood Prison Great Saint. The Blood Prison Great Saint turned its head to glance at Yuan, a strange look in its eyes. Yuan felt uneasy all over, watched by the demon. Could it be wanting to eat him? He indeed looks quite a bit like Hao. It's just that the talent is far inferior. I didn't expect the offspring of such a genius to be so disappointing, the Blood Prison Great Saint remarked. Upon hearing this, an irate Yuan glared, but he dared not retort. Guan slapped the Blood Prison Great Saint on the back and said crossly, "Why speak so of the younger generation? Do you believe I could make you worse off than him?" The Blood Prison Great Saint, shivering all over, did not dare to speak further. Yuan curiously looked at Guan, feeling a newfound fondness for him. For some reason, from that first glimpse of Guan, he felt a great liking for him, sensing that his smile was so gentle, bringing him a feeling of kinship. Guan waved Yuan over, beckoning him to stand beside the Blood Prison Great Saint. Chapter 393, Xingtian. Terror Descends. Do you want to know how I met your ancestor Hao? Guan looked at Yuan with a smile and asked. Yuan felt uncomfortable, knowing his ancestor was still alive and very powerful. He was full of hostility towards Hao and did not want to listen to anything about Hao. However, he could not afford to defy Guan and had to nod in agreement. It was an internal strife within the supreme sect. Guan looked ahead, his tone full of emotion. His voice had a compelling power, letting Yuan vaguely see a certain scene. It was a grand hall where Guan met Hao. The one walking ahead, Si Yenner, was also listening attentively, curious about Hao's experiences in the supreme sect. An hour later, the group arrived at Mystic Valley, and Guan asked Jianghu to help settle them. At present, Lu Jiujia had already begun to delegate authority to Jianghu increasingly. Among the disciples in the valley, Jianghu had the highest cultivation level and deepest seniority. The disciples all respected him. In the depths of the night. Inside the house, Si Yenner sat opposite Xian, taking out a blood-stained piece of paper left by Hao. Looking at it made Xin's heart ache for Yuan. On the way back, she had already learned about the plight of Hao's descendants and was quite indignant. I don't know what this paper means, can you help me understand? Si Yenner asked nervously, also unclear about what she should do after arriving at the Supreme Sect. Xian saw the words, Supreme Sect, and knew that Hao wanted his descendants to seek Guyan's help in desperate times. She pondered and asked, "What is your request?" Hearing this, Si Yenner felt hopeful and said, "I don't expect much, I only hope to change the destiny of that boy Yuan." Xian thought for a moment and suggested, "Let's keep Yuan in Medicine Valley then. I will take care of him and you can also stay and join the Supreme Sect, but you must not meet him." She knew Guyan's character. Being able to keep Yuan was already good enough. She couldn't keep the whole family in Medicine Valley, especially since the Supreme Sect was vast, and for someone of Si Yenner's cultivation level, joining was not difficult. Upon hearing this, Si Yenner immediately grabbed Xin's hand in gratitude. She didn't doubt Xin's words. Xian was also a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao and naturally could meet Sword Venerable Fudao. "About my relationship with my master, do not speak to others about it," Xian said earnestly. "He does not wish to be disturbed, and I am just a disciple of Medicine Valley and do not want to be involved in troubles." After speaking, she suddenly realized why Guan liked to say these words. Not bad, quite a feeling. Si Yenner immediately promised not to divulge it. For Si Yenner, that night was one of relief, and for Yuan, it was filled with hope. As the moon set and the sun rose in the early morning, Yuan was drawn by the commotion in Medicine Valley. He stepped outside the house and saw nearly 300 disciples practicing drills together. It was quite spectacular. Si Yenner was also watching from the side. When the drills finished, she bid farewell to Guan, preparing to leave since she had more than just Yuan as a descendant. "If life gets tough, bring your offspring in return," Guan said gently. "I still have some influence in the Supreme Sect and can help you sort things out." He would not deliberately aid those with whom he did not have a close karmic connection, but if someone came to him for help, he wouldn't refuse. Moreover, he foresaw that the family offended by the infamily would have further entanglements of gratitude and resentment, a long line of fate. Si Yenner hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement and thanked Guan. Watching her departing figure, Guan thought about seeing her in the past as Sword Venerable Fudao. At that time she did not have this weathered air about her, lively and playful like Zhen Qin, and seemed like a joyous nemesis within Hao. Times and circumstances change. Guan mused, his gaze then shifting to An Yuan. He probably understood why An Yuan had a short lifespan. An Yuan's ancestors had all died due to misfortune, especially in recent generations, dying ever so prematurely. Everything was related to the heritage An Hao had received at the Holy Court. Heavenly Dao heritage. This made Guan think of the Heaven sect, which had also received the Heavenly Dao's heritage and then had to abandon all emotions after gaining great power. Could it be that the descendants and close friends of the Heaven sect had all died due to misfortune? Such a Heavenly Dao heritage was too malicious. Why was it so? Could it be that it intended to make the Heavenly Dao cultivators desireless and without emotional weaknesses? Guan did have a method to try, which was to sever the cause and effect between An Yuan and An Hao, making the two unrelated. Looking at extremes in lifespan, An Yuan was also talented, just not as much as An Hao. He wasn't in a hurry to change An Yuan's fate just yet, hoping to let the boy settle for 2 years first. His intention for revenge was too strong, highly resembling the early days of Su Han. Days passed by one after another. After joining the Mystic Valley, An Yuan received the cultivation techniques from Jianghu. Although he could not become strong quickly, he finally saw some hope. One night, An Yuan had a heart-to-heart talk with Jianghu. The two had similar fates, both carrying deep-seated hatreds. The difference was that An Yuan was also trapped in destiny, which made Jianghu feel very sympathetic and decided to give him a hand. Jianghu took An Yuan as his disciple and taught him all he knew. Guan did not stop them, hoping they could redeem each other. Until one afternoon at the end of autumn. I've decided. An Yuan suddenly stood up, his face firm as he looked towards the distant sky. Sitting by his side, Jianghu looked at him in surprise, not knowing why the boy was so agitated. The master and disciple were on a mountaintop, overlooking the magnificent landscape afar. An Yuan, with great ambition, shouted loudly, I want to surpass An Hao. From now on, I'm not called An Yuan. My name is An Xingtian. Boom! Thunder rumbled in the distant clouds as if the heavens were responding to him. Jianghu looked at An Xingtian, feeling a shiver in his spirit from an unprecedented aura radiating from him. He had never met An Hao but had heard of his legend. That was a cultivator said to have the highest talent. This boy's ambition. A smile appeared on Jianghu's face. He was about to speak when a loud voice echoed between heaven and earth. The strongest man in the Broken Sea domain, Holy Sword of the Holy Court, show yourself. If you do not appear, I will suppress all living beings in Broken Sea domain with one palm. The voice was immensely domineering and filled with oppression, startling An Xingtian and Jianghu as they looked up, both opening their mouths in disbelief. Above, the dark clouds churned, and an immensely majestic figure appeared on the horizon, full body obscured, only a golden breastplate visible, which was larger than any mountain between heaven and earth. It was as if a demon god from beyond the world was peering at the mortal spirits within. The sense of oppression chilled An Xingtian and Jianghu down to their spines. Not just them, the entire Taizong continent, the entire Broken Sea domain, all living beings who saw that majestic figure felt fear. What kind of existence was this? Could it be an immortal? At the third Medicine Valley, Guan walked downstairs, and Ji Xiaoyu also stepped outside, looking at the figure on the horizon, her brows furrowed. Where are you going? Ji Xiaoyu called out to Guan, I'm going to see Mystic Valley, worried about the disciples. Guan replied over his shoulder, then quickly walked toward the transmission array platform. Chapter 394. How can he be so strong above the sea of clouds? A man clad in golden battle armor stood proudly. He had a strapping figure and exuded an aura of domination. Clutching a long spear, his golden armor radiated a brilliance that reached thousands of meters. Looking above his helmet, the stars scattered across and the universe dazzled. He appeared as if he was amidst the universe itself. Looking downward, he could see the vast ocean with continents appearing as mere pebbles under his feet, so insignificant. His gaze locked onto the Taizong continent, filled with a fighting spirit. He hailed from the Immortal dynasty, known as Autumn Evening Immortal Lord. Upon closer inspection, his left hand was held aloft, and within the palm was a city with numerous cultivators above it, tinier than specks of dust. Broken Sea Domain City. Qing Songzi, whose cultivation level had reached the 7th layer of the carefree primordial immortal realm, looked up at Autumn Evening Immortal Lord with eyes filled with fear. This domain master of the Broken Sea had never felt so weak. He who ruled over all beings in his domain now felt only panic, unable to maintain the demeanor of a domain master. What do? We can't escape at all. What realm is this guy in that he can suppress us all with a single palm? Autumn Evening Immortal Lord, I've heard of his legends. He surpassed the carefree primordial immortal centuries ago. In his youth, he was unrivaled among his peers. The immortal dynasty is too presumptuous. Aren't they afraid of Xingtian coming back? We should have eradicated the immortal dynasty long ago. The successive Shangshans were too benevolent. Cultivators in Broken Sea Domain City discussed anxiously as despair spread throughout the city. Autumn Evening Immortal Lord did not glance at the city in his palm. His focus remained steadfast on Taitsong continent, waiting for the Holy Court Holy Sword to make a move. If he could slay the Holy Sword, he would gain immense chi fortune. He had investigated. The Holy Court Holy Sword had not received the chi fortune of the Holy Court, making him an easier target without the protection of the chi fortune of the Holy Court. He patiently waited as he had set a deadline in his mind. If the Holy Court Holy Sword did not appear by the time, he would have no choice but to annihilate the Broken Sea domain. For him, a born immortal spirit, slaying numerous beings did not evoke any guilt, just as humans may feel disgust but rarely guilt when stepping on a horde of insects. All beings within the Broken Sea domain could look up and see his immense projection. This was a divine skill with immense oppressive force, aimed to crush the spirits of the masses and kill any intent of resistance. Facing his figure that seemingly dwarfed the heavens and the earth, most beings felt intense fear. Even if they thought of fleeing, they didn't know where to go. It seemed wherever they flew, they couldn't escape from beneath the feet of Autumn Evening Immortal Lord. This was a sensation of despair like facing the vast heavens. In the Supreme Sect, within Mystic Valley, Jianghu and Xingtian returned to the valley, and the disciples surrounded Guan extremely tense. In such times they could only rely on Guan, hoping he could comfort them. Don't worry, the Supreme Sect is full of experts. Moreover, Sword Venerable Fudao is here. If someone provokes Sword Venerable Fudao, how could he tolerate it? Guan spoke, alleviating some of the disciples' tension, but some still harbored concerns. Master, is Sword Venerable Fudao really still here? Although there is indeed a vast sword intent on the heavenly repair platform, he hasn't made a move in many years. A disciple said worriedly, immediately causing other disciples to echo his sentiment, and panic spread once again. Guan continued to comfort them verbally while considering in his heart how to deal with this Tao Void mysterious immortal. How dare this guy show such a form and openly challenge him in front of everyone? Then Guan must also defeat this man assertively in front of all beings. It's been too long since he last acted. It's about time to remind the disciples of his existence. This time he wouldn't use swordsmanship, opting for something more spectacular. After calming the disciples, Guan turned and walked toward the transmission array platform. When he teleported to the third medicine valley, as soon as his right foot touched the ground, he began to unleash his divine skills. Ji Xiaoyu first turned her gaze towards him, but a moment later she was captivated by the anomaly in the sky. Rolling dark clouds spun violently, and a massive wind surged between heaven and earth as an immense oppressive force descended. Countless beings instinctively looked up only to witness a moment they would never forget. The sea of clouds in the sky formed a cyclone that kept rising as if intending to sweep into outer heaven. As the remaining clouds ascended, more of Autumn Evening Immortal Lord's majestic figure was revealed. However, this time, the beings did not fear his figure because a yet larger presence appeared. That was the sky's zenith. A huge disk, swirling with gray mist, expanded while rotating, quickly overshadowing the top of Autumn Evening Immortal Lord's head. Autumn Evening Immortal Lord's true form looked up as his immense projection did likewise, his face showing fear. The ultimate primordial disk. This was a great divine power inherently possessed by the primordial ultimate body, supremely overbearing. Guan had never used this great divine power in reality before. As the ultimate primordial disk began to coalesce, the vast oppressive force engulfed Autumn Evening Immortal Lord, leaving him unable to escape. How is this possible? What is his cultivation level? Autumn Evening Immortal Lord thought with a pounding heart. He was a Tao Void mysterious immortal, and the Holy Court Holy Sword had never demonstrated the power of a Tao Void mysterious immortal in the reports from the Immortal Dynasty. The holy sword's strength was regarded as between the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma and a Tao void mysterious immortal. Even if it reached the level of a Tao void mysterious immortal, it shouldn't surpass his own. He was a Tao void mysterious immortal of the 7th layer. But right now he finally realized how terrifying the cultivation level of the Holy Court Holy Sword was. Not even a divine thought true immortal could possess such exaggerated oppressive power. He could not escape, nor could he speak, and even his divine sense and primordial spirit could not leave his body. Fear and despair swiftly occupied his heart, and his eyes were full of terror. Under his gaze, the ultimate body of the primordial talisman successfully condensed, and the gray disk was covered in dense patterns, as if it hid a vast world, awe-inspiring to behold. The projection of the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor was immensely large, towering over everything, making all else seem insignificant, yet under the ultimate body of the primordial talisman, he appeared less so. The ultimate body of the primordial talisman seemed to cover the entire great heavenly spirit land. In truth, it only covered the sky of the Broken Sea domain. Guan had used a small trick. In the eyes of the beings in the Broken Sea domain, the ultimate body of the primordial talisman indeed seemed as vast as the great heavenly spirit land, creating a terrifying visual impact. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared from thin air next to Ji Xiaoyu, looking up in amazement. What kind of divine power is this? The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor was filled with fear. He had heard of Sword Venerable Fudeo's existence, but his divine sense had swept through the supreme sect without finding him. He thought Sword Venerable Fudao had been scared off. Now, it seemed that their cultivation levels were too different, and he simply couldn't detect where Sword Venerable Fudao was, or who he was. Perhaps Sword Venerable Fudao had appeared before him and he had failed to see through him. The thought made him shiver with dread. Standing beside him, Ji Xiaoyu did not respond. She too had never witnessed this divine power, and her heart was filled with shock. Just how powerful was Sword Venerable Fudao? She had already recalled memories from her past life, where in the 7-star spirit realm, Sword Venerable Fudeo's demonstrated strength was far less than it was now. She had then looked forward to Sword Venerable Fudeo's future, but now, it seemed she had underestimated him. Back then, she had unleashed the power of a primordial Taoist talisman, with her true self's consciousness returning. If her true self had misjudged, didn't that imply that Sword Venerable Fudeo's Tao level was stronger than her true self's? Her feelings became complicated. If they felt this way, what about all living beings? What is that? My heavens, am I dreaming? Could it be that heaven is angry? It's Sword Venerable Fudao. It must be him. He's still in the supreme sect. Why isn't Sword Venerable Fudao displaying Sword Tao divine skills? Isn't this divine power stronger than the Sword Tao? Look at that guy, he's scared stiff. Ha ha ha, daring to challenge Sword Venerable Fudao is truly seeking death. The supreme sect was abuzz. Everyone revitalized, and the beings of the Taitsong continent were also excited, shouting the name of Sword Venerable Fudao. For the countless beings of the Broken Sea domain, it was merely a shock. Is this the capability of the Holy Sword of the Holy Court? If heaven had power, would it not be like this? It's been many years since anyone dared to challenge me. This is the ultimate body of the primordial talisman. Feel the power of the Tao. A hoarse voice echoed through the world, laden with oppression. Hearing this voice, all beings were electrified. Yu Yingying looked towards Guan from afar, seeing his shocked expression, and she was filled with confusion. And Xan was also looking at Guan, and her heart was full of admiration. Compared to her master, her acting was still too poor. At the same time she was overwhelmed. Was this truly her master's power? Little did she know, Guan hadn't even used his full strength. He had even suppressed his aura to the 9th layer of the divine thought true immortal realm, giving others a glimmer of hope to continue sending people to their doom. Yet even so, Ji Xiaoyu felt he was beyond a divine thought true immortal, and perhaps even a usual free immortal could not match him. Boom, a deafening roar erupted, rendering the beings temporarily deaf, which didn't pain them but merely left them unable to hear. Countless creatures watched the vast ultimate body of the primordial talisman descend, as if witnessing a divine spectacle. Guan opened his mouth in disbelief, staring at the sky as the strong wind swirled his robes. With a thought, he allowed the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor to speak, nothing more. No, Elder. I was wrong. Give me a chance to atone. Once the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor realized he could speak, like grasping a lifeline in water, he yelled hoarsely, his voice echoing throughout the Broken Sea domain. Under Guan's suppression, Beings outside the Broken Sea domain couldn't hear, but the already deaf beings of the Broken Sea domain distinctly heard the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's hoarse scream. Guan was establishing his authority among the beings of the Broken Sea domain, yet he also wanted the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court to underestimate him. No matter how much the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor begged for mercy, the descent speed of the ultimate body of the primordial talisman suddenly decreased. Eventually, the ultimate body of the primordial talisman landed above the head of the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. Almost instantly, the projection of the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor was annihilated, and his true self felt an incredibly terrifying suction force. The main city of the Broken Sea domain he held was yanked out, crashing into the ocean, leaving the cultivators there wide-eyed. They would never forget this scene in their lifetimes. How could he be so powerful? Qing Songzi muttered to himself, suddenly realizing why Sword Venerable Fudao had declined the offer of the Chi Fortune Fruit position, and why the Holy Minister had agreed. Chapter 395. Fame Shakes the World. The Apex Talent. The Supreme Primordial Great Disk hung high above, much like the highest and supreme Tao suspended above all living beings. The true form of Immortal Lord Qiushi was drawn into the Supreme Primordial Great Disk, so filled with despair and helplessness, devoid of any means of resistance. As he disappeared into the Supreme Primordial Great Disk, the rumbling of heaven and earth continued unabated, causing the entire Broken Sea domain to tremble as if the apocalypse had arrived. Moments later, a prompt appeared before Guan's eyes. You have successfully slain Immortal Lord Qiushi, Tao Void Mysterious Immortal Realm Level 7, 340,876 years of lifespan. Not bad, it saves half a month's labor. Although Guan thought this, the look of shock remained on his face. That was his belief, the acting had to be thorough. The Supreme Primordial Great Disk did not vanish immediately but continued to hang in the sky for the adoration of all beings. Because the Supreme Primordial Great Disk was so immense, the patterns on it were so clear to all beings, those images seemed to record ancient myths, which left the beings in awe. After a long while, the wind between heaven and earth began to calm, and a majestic gray fog emerged around the Supreme Primordial Great Disk, drowning it in splendor, and the sky darkened. Only then did the beings regain their senses, instantly stirring with excitement. The oppressive might of Immortal Lord Qiushi had completely vanished. Did this not mean that Sword Venerable Fudao had slain him? Unbelievable. Immortal Lord Qiushi had appeared daunting and formidable, like the wrath of the vast heavens, and the mortal spirits could only tremble. Even with Sword Venerable Fudao's intervention, they had expected an earth-shattering great battle, yet it ended with one-sided suppression. Tyrannical. Invincible. Even though they could not see Sword Venerable Fudao in person, this was the impression that the beings formed of Sword Venerable Fudao from witnessing the battle. The sky gradually brightened, and the dark clouds began to disperse, leaving no trace of the Supreme Primordial Great Disk as if it had never appeared. The third Medicine Valley was abuzz with noise. All disciples were excited. Guan briskly approached Ji Xiaoyu and eagerly asked, "With your abilities, can you tell what realm Sword Venerable Fudao is in?" Ji Xiaoyu looked at him, offering no reply. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor then took a deep breath and said, "His realm is not something you should conjecture, boy. Just be your mortal self, and do not involve yourself in great causes." Having said that, he vanished into thin air. Guan pretended to be astonished but felt secretly thrilled inside. Yes, this is the feeling. Though you look down on me, I shall wait for you on the immortal path, but whether you can make me see you, that's still to be seen. Guan turned to Ji Xiaoyu and asked, was he unsettled by Sword Venerable Fudao? Ji Xiaoyu nodded and said, "Indeed, Sword Venerable Fudao is powerful. I never expected there to be such a great cultivator hidden within the great heavenly spirit land. I even suspect." "Suspect what?" "Nothing, I'm going back to cultivate." As Ji Xiaoyu turned away and left, Guan cocked his head, feeling as though she too was provoked. Guan chuckled inwardly and then waited in place, feeling Shenzhen's presence, eager to hear how Shenzhen would boast about Sword Venerable Fudao. After 30 minutes, Supreme Sect remained noisy, and there were even many disciples kneeling at the heavenly repair platform in worship of the heaven-cutting axe. Inside the loft, Guan had a strange look on his face as he watched Shenzhen sketch the Supreme Primordial Great Disk on paper. He had a very subtle feeling that someone was spying on his path, and that person was Shenzhen. That is to say, Shenzhen's drawing concealed mysteries. He also pondered another question: if he could feel Shenzhen spying, then could the ancient beings depicted in her previous drawing sense her too? There was a time before when a drawing suddenly destroyed itself. Was that perhaps a warning? How about it? Impressive, right? Shenzhen saw Guan silent and proudly asked. Guan looked up at her and asked, "Aren't you afraid of displeasing Sword Venerable Fudao?" Shenzhen waved her hand and said, "How could that be? Sword Venerable Fudao guards the Supreme Sect, and now I too am a disciple of the Supreme Sect. He is practically my martial master. How could he mind such things? Don't forget the existence of the Heavenly Repair Platform. No one in this world has a broader heart than Sword Venerable Fudao." Well spoken, I like it. Guan then joined in the praises for Sword Venerable Fudao, catching Shenzhen in the act, who had long admired Sword Venerable Fudao, and today's battle had awakened the fervor hidden deep in her heart. It was not just them. Throughout the various oceans, continents, and islands of the Broken Sea domain, wherever there were living beings, they were discussing Sword Venerable Fudao. They preferred the name Sword Venerable Fudao over the Holy Court's Holy Sword. Moreover, the title of Holy Sword had been unilaterally announced by the Holy Court, and they had not heard of Sword Venerable Fudao accepting this title. The commotion at the Broken Sea domain was great, and even though Guan tried to contain it, the prior activities of the Autumn Evening Immortal Lord had already spread, causing various sects to start sending people to investigate. The impact of this battle was far from over. It continued to spread over the following years. The Autumn Evening Immortal Lord was no ordinary being. He was the highest realm faller of the Immortal dynasty. When the news reached the Holy Court, the Holy Minister was greatly pleased. "Haha, do you see? This is why I agreed to him not accepting the chief fortune. When I met him I felt he was extraordinary. Now it seems he might very well be a free immortal." The Holy Minister stood on the high steps, laughing heartily with great passion. In the hall stood holy gods, holy kings, and other beings of the third-grade heavenly position. They were all immensely shocked. The Autumn Evening Immortal Lord was an age-old being with unquestioned power, yet he was easily slain. How can you tell he's a free immortal? The divine thought true immortal could also kill the Autumn Evening Immortal. The key is you couldn't see how he killed the Autumn Evening Immortal. Yang Xian Emperor must be furious now. I heard the Immortal dynasty had previously also sent people to woo Sword Venerable Fudao. A free immortal? Who exactly is this divine personage? If he truly is a free immortal, his name must resonate through the ages. Could he be from outside heaven? But we need not investigate him. It would only push him towards the Immortal dynasty. From his actions, this person has a compassionate heart for all living beings. Befriending him would pose no threat. The high ranks of the Holy Court discussed fervently, admiring Sword Venerable Fudao, which made the Holy Minister smile even more broadly. Their previous attempt to woo Sword Venerable Fudao had already caused discontent within the Holy Court, and with the court being suppressed by the Immortal dynasty over the years, the Holy Minister felt deeply stifled. "No, I must make another trip," the Holy Minister thought, his eyes twinkling. The Immortal dynasty received the news just as fast. Because a Tao Void mysterious immortal from their ranks had died, the Autumn Evening Immortal Lord held a revered position in the Holy Court. His death thoroughly enraged the Immortals, making Sword Venerable Fudao the most hated figure among them. And Hao was also oppressed because of this, but his life was not in danger. Before dealing with Sword Venerable Fudao, he was grounded and couldn't leave the Immortal dynasty. The deterrent power of slaying a Tao Void mysterious immortal was indeed too strong, which prevented the Immortal dynasty from retaliating immediately, instead sinking into a strange silence. When Guan and Xian went to the Mortal World Peak, all the peaks were discussing this battle. The name of Sword Venerable Fudao resounded across the world once more, earning the admiration of countless beings. After all, though Sword Venerable Fudao was a holy sword of the Holy Court, he had not received the reward of chief fortune. Without being under the Holy Court or the Immortal dynasty, his capability to exhibit his own mighty prowess was truly awe-inspiring. Time flew swiftly. 3 years passed and the end of the year arrived. Guan arrived in Mystic Valley and saw his disciples clearing the snow. His gaze landed on the mountain beside him wherein Xingtian was following Jianghu in cultivation, all disciples feeling Jianghu's preference for Xingtian. Lu Jiujia walked over and laughed. "That kid, like me back in the day, truly spares no effort in teaching his disciples, holding nothing back." In his view, Jianghu did quite well. After all, Xingtian was a descendant of An Hao. Regardless of Shengxin's achievements, he was at least forming a good bond with Hao. Guan nodded and said, "Call them both to my cabin in a while." With that, he walked toward his own pavilion. Soon he arrived inside his house, rubbed his hands together, and then from his sleeves he took out a book. A radiant smile appeared on his face as he muttered, Xiantiani, could you write a bit faster? You're really slowing down." It had been decades since the last volume of Green Hero Travelogue was released, and over those years, Guan had been eagerly waiting. He could have divined the contents of Green Hero Travelogue by divining Xiantiani, but he had chosen not to. After all, life should have some expectations. Otherwise time would pass very quickly. He sat in a chair and began reading the book. About 30 minutes later, Jianghu brought in Xingtian to Guan's house. 20-year-old Xingtian had even more of Hao's demeanor. Their facial features were nearly identical, which was probably why Si Yener had relented. There had been other descendants of the Yin family asking her, but she had refused them all. Both of them bowed to Guan. And Xingtian curiously looked at Guan. Since entering the valley, this was the first time Guan had summoned him. Although he didn't think the nascent soul realm was very impressive, Jianghu always mentioned Guan was no ordinary man, which made him quite curious about Guan. Jianghu looked at Guan, his eyes concealing none of his admiration. Thinking back to that majestic scene 3 years ago, his heart surged with emotion. What loose immortal master must be Sword Venerable Fudao. No one in the entire Supreme Sect knew about Sword Venerable Fudao's hidden identity, yet Guan hid his cultivation. It was too coincidental. Xingtian, have you felt any discomfort lately? Guan asked, his face wearing a gentle smile. He had laughed aloud when he first heard the name in Xingtian. This young man wanting to surpass Hao? How could that be possible? Not to mention the talent, Guan would never allow his proud disciple to be surpassed by a junior. No matter how many strong and talented individuals he had seen, Hao still remained his proudest disciple in Guan's heart, even compared to the absolute geniuses in Lu Han and Long Zhan's memories, Hao lost to no one. He calculated the days, Hao was getting closer and closer to the Nirvana realm. After receiving the heavenly Tao inheritance in the Holy Court, Hao's cultivation had surged like floodwaters through a broken dam, unstoppable in its growth. No discomfort, master. Have you noticed anything? And Xingtian asked nervously. The curse of the Yin family was still a shadow over his heart. He also feared suddenly dropping dead. Chapter 396. The Origin of the Surname and Figures upon the River of Destiny. Watching the utterly nervous Xingtian, Guan reined in his smile and said, "You can only live to 25. At these words, Shengxin's face drastically changed. Over the years, his cultivation level had risen rapidly, giving him hope, only to be told that he could only live to 25. How could he accept that? Jianghu was equally frightened. He couldn't see any issues within Xingtian, but he wouldn't question Guan's judgment. He quickly asked, "Master, is there really no solution? Can't immortal cultivation change fate?" Guan answered, "There is, and it's to sever your karmic ties and bloodline with Hao. By doing so, from now on, the Yin family will forget you as if you were never born into their world, though those unrelated to the Yin family could still remember you." And Xingtian was stunned, and Jianghu was also scared. What kind of method was this? Jianghu, recalling that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao, immediately calmed down, while Xingtian grew curious about the real identity of Guan. "Sever them, then sever them, I am willing." And Xingtian gritted his teeth. Although, over the years, under Jianghu's guidance, his hostility towards Hao had waned, he still didn't acknowledge Hao in his heart. In his view, Hao's bloodline was far from a glory but a shame instead. Guan said, "Think about your deceased father, your grandfather, and also your mother, your sister. They will all forget you." And Xingtian opened his mouth but couldn't be as resolute as before. Guan had Jianghu make tea for him. He wanted to see what decision Xingtian would make. Although Jianghu wanted to interject, he understood the meaning behind Guan's instruction to pour tea. He was to stay out of it. And Xingtian clenched his fists, his mind filled with memories of time spent with his family. Unwilling. Why should he? Suddenly, Xingtian decided to accept his fate, just like the 2 words left by Hao. Resigned. But when he thought of the deep hatred born from his father's and grandfather's blood, he couldn't convince himself. How could he protect his living family members without strong cultivation? Just as Guan was about to lift the tea that Jianghu had brewed, Xingtian said solemnly, "Sever. I must sever." I need to become stronger. Even if they forget me, I must have the strength to protect them. They may not remember me, but as long as I remember them, that is enough. A look of gratification flashed in Guan's eyes, at least for now, and Xingtian thought more about protecting his family rather than revenge. He didn't oppose Enshengshen's desire for revenge, but he hoped that revenge wouldn't be the sole purpose of Enshengshen's life. Guan drank the tea in one go and then stood up, his gaze falling upon Xingtian. The gold pattern on his forehead began to emit a golden light, as if an eye had appeared on his forehead, leaving Xingtian and Jianghu wide-eyed. Boom. The scene around them abruptly changed, removing the pavilion's furnishings from their view, and they found themselves in a space that was surreal and eerie. The two instinctively turned their heads but could see nothing. They just felt an inexplicable panic. Guan picked up the fate-determining pen, pointing it at Xingtian. Xingtian had seen the fate-determining pen before and hadn't thought much of it, but at this moment, it seemed so terrifying. Jianghu felt the same, and looking again at the crown on Guan's head, he also felt its extraordinary nature. Could it be that his master was a treasure all over? His eyes were full of awe and fervor, wishing he could prostrate himself to his master right there. To cultivate under such a powerful figure, he felt so fortunate. Are you ready, Xingtian? Guan asked emotionlessly, causing Enshengshen's throat to bob. I forgot to tell you, Guan said, the yin in your family is taken from my name. Even if the yin family forgets you, as long as you follow me, you will never be separated from the yin family. These words made Enshengshen's eyes widen in disbelief. Sword Venerable Fudao. Xingtian felt like he had been hit by a pleasant surprise. Just as he was about to speak, Guan suddenly brandished his pen, and with a single stroke, Xingtian felt as though he had been struck by lightning, his entire body frozen in place. His complexion drastically changed. He wanted to speak but found himself incapable. He could feel something being shed from him, being abandoned. An endless tide of loneliness overwhelmed him, and he fell into an unprecedented fear, his eyes unexpectedly brimming over with tears. At that moment he was like a lost child, wanting to crouch down and hold himself. Your talent may not equal Hao's, but can your will surpass his? Guan's voice reached him, like dawn's light chasing away the darkness from Enshengshen's inner world. Xingtian looked up to see Guan and Jianghu standing before him, Jianghu looking anxious and seemingly trying to say something, but Xingtian couldn't hear a thing. His gaze rested on Guan, who was looking back at him calmly. For some reason he didn't feel distanced, instead he sensed a kind of power. I cannot let down my master's expectations. Xingtian gritted his teeth and forcefully suppressed the negative emotions in his heart, his body trembling as if he were in a chilly cellar. At that moment, Guan's brow furrowed and he shifted his right foot. Suddenly, an explosive burst of demonic chi enveloped the surrounding space. Jianghu turned his head, looking towards Guan with astonishment. Guan remained silent, waiting for the threads of Enshengshen's fate to be stripped away. Aren't you afraid of the heavenly Taoist backlash, Taoist friend, for changing the fate of a person entangled with the karma of the heavenly Tao? An indifferent voice came from outside the demonic chi, startling Jianghu into hastily turning around. How could there be someone else? Guan lifted his head, his gaze piercing through the demonic chi, crossing the void, to peer into another mysterious and dark space. Within it flowed a magnificent river, emanating radiant auroras, neither its source nor endpoint visible. The River of Destiny. A figure stood atop the River of Destiny. The figure shone with a silvery light, with only their silhouette discernible. Guan couldn't see through to their true form, but he could sense the other had locked onto his position. He had already employed the supreme concealing void technique, rendering the space around him impenetrable to peering eyes. Thus, he wasn't worried. Moreover, the River of Destiny was incredibly distant from him. The other party was merely communicating, with no intention of descending into the great heavenly spirit land. Do you wish to warn or stop me? Guan asked. The voice of the silvery figure carried through. I intend to warn. I drift within the River of Destiny and cannot descend upon the world. You need not worry. I can see that you, Taoist friend, have stepped onto the way of cause and effect. One day we shall meet. I will await you by the River of Destiny. Guan seemed to think of something. His expression turned strange as he continued to ask, May I know the name of my Taoist friend? I have no Taoist title, only a common name which is likely unknown. My name is Lu Qiuxian. Hearing the name, Guan fell silent. Jianghu didn't even dare to breathe too heavily. The River of Destiny. The way of cause and effect. And Lu Qiuxian. Just the sound of it was terrifying. Is this the world of the immortal path realm? While shocked, Jianghu felt an unprecedented ambition and resolve stirring within him. Chapter 397. The Escaper of the Heavenly Dao Lu Qiuxian. Guwen fell into silence, his thoughts drifting to Lu Han within the reincarnation evolution. The turning point in Lu Han's life was the birth of Lu Qiuxian. With a talent that surpassed all others, the only thing Lu Han did before his death was to resurrect Lu Qiuxian in the River of Destiny. Listening to Lu Qiuxian's words, Guwen could feel his vicissitudes. It was hard to imagine the long and desolate years he had endured alone. Having all of Lu Han's memories, Guwen naturally felt differently about Lu Qiuxian. In his eyes, Lu Qiuxian was his son. Guwen even speculated that the reason why reincarnation evolution came to be might simply be that it was originally real, just as the free immortal had to experience the reincarnation tribulation. The reincarnation tribulation of the free immortal would also lead to rebirth in different times and spaces, and the time span of reincarnation evolution was even larger, indicating a higher level of reincarnation tribulation. Guwen reined in his thoughts and spoke, "Thank you for the reminder, Taoist friend. My name is Meng Lang. Should I have the chance to visit the River of Destiny in the future, we can discuss and exchange Taoist sorcery." Above the River of Destiny, Lu Qiuxian, emitting a silver glow, did not immediately respond. He stood there like an afterimage, about to vanish into the torrent of destiny. After a while, "All right." Lu Qiuxian agreed and then disappeared into thin air above the River of Destiny. Guwen's gaze shifted to Xingtian, watching as he detached from the causality of the Yin family. Jianghu's mind wandered, curious about Lu Qiuxian's cultivation level. "Do not mention what just occurred to anyone including Xingtian," Guwen suddenly said. Upon hearing this, Jianghu hurriedly promised to keep the matter to himself. In fact, even without Guwen's instruction, he had no intention of sharing it with others. Witnessing such great power was his own fortune. How could he share it with others? Time continued to pass. And Xingtian was immersed in his own pain, unaware of what had just transpired. He could only make out the vague figures of Guwen and another. He gritted his teeth and persisted as the memories of the Yin family in his mind became increasingly blurred, which frightened him. He could accept the Yin family forgetting him, but he could not forget them. If both sides forgot each other, they would truly become unconnected, which was not the outcome he desired. "Master. Martial Master." And Xingtian gritted his teeth, his cry not for the Valley Master of Mystic Valley but for Enhao's Master, Sword Venerable Fudao. "Focus your mind. As long as you miss them enough you won't forget." Guwen's voice followed. He had his own motives, deliberately tempering in Xingtian, hoping Xingtian would hold family ties in the highest regard to prevent him from opposing Enhao in the future. In his heart, Enhao was definitely more important. Without Enhao there would be no Xingtian. Hearing Guwen's words, Xingtian persisted. Suddenly, with a boom, blood flame abruptly ignited on him. His body curled up and trembled incessantly. Guwen raised his right hand and a dark purple medicinal herb appeared, promptly turning into powder that hovered in his palm, forming a whirlwind. Jianghu couldn't help but fix his gaze on the whirlwind in Guwen's palm, curious about what Guwen was about to do. Guwen then swung his palm toward Xingtian. As the palm struck out, Shengshen's flesh instantly dispersed, leaving only a skeleton behind, which startled Jianghu. Before he could utter a word, a dark purple mist surrounded Xingtian, quickly enveloping him and covering the skeleton. Jianghu looked intently, his hands clenched into fists inside his sleeves, his heart in turmoil. Fearful that Xingtian would die right there. The scene was too frightening. Flesh had dispersed in an instant. Could a person still live? The dark purple mist soon submerged the skeleton, billowing and slowly forming the outline of flesh. "That is..." Jianghu's eyes widened, his expression one of astonishment. Guwen remained expressionless. This was a 9th-tier medicinal herb which he had acquired at great cost. It contained vast spiritual energy, making the molding of a flesh body not challenging, as long as Shengshen's life force was controlled. If his soul had not left the body, it would be manageable. A new life and destiny. What path will you take from here? Guwen wondered to himself, also contemplating whether Shengshen's maximum lifespan would increase. If it could, this act would also be a method of defying the heavens and changing one's fate. Inside the attic, Guwen sat in a chair, his eyes filled with disappointment. And Xingtian, Foundation Establishment Realm 8th Floor 20/350/5000. His cultivation level had increased as had his lifespan, but his maximum lifespan had not. That is to say, replacing bloodlines was not a way to change maximum lifespan. The concept of maximum lifespan became even more complex in Guan's eyes. Luckily, Xingtian was considered as having defied fate, breaking free from the destiny of the Yin family. Master, may I take him down? Jianghu, holding Xingtian and wearing an anxious expression, asked. Xingtian was covered in a robe for modesty and had not yet awakened. Guan nodded, and Jianghu sighed with relief, signaling that Xingtian was already out of danger. He immediately carried Xingtian away. After leaving the house, he also closed the door behind him. Guan then began to ponder about Lu Qiuxian. After Lu Han was executed by the Black Profound Emperor, how did Lu Qiuxian survive? There must have been many stories behind it. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away from the Supreme Sect, carriages progressed across the mountains. Si Yenner was meditating on the floor of a carriage when she suddenly opened her eyes, frowning. What's going on? This feeling, what exactly is it? Why can't I remember? Si Yenner mumbled to herself, experiencing an inexplicable sense of emptiness within her. In the carriage behind her, a mother and daughter felt the same, clutching their chests in silence, sinking into an indescribable sadness, without understanding what was causing their grief. And Hao, who was far away in the Immortal dynasty, sensed it too. He abruptly opened his eyes, his brows furrowed in concern. He looked towards the setting sun in the distance, his gaze filled with confusion. He sat meditating on a cliff, his body entwined with chains of golden light, unable to stand up. Who is trying to sever the karma with me? And Hao wondered in surprise, having delved into the way of cause and effect since he had received the legacy of the heavenly Tao. However, his understanding of the way of cause and effect was still weak, lacking the power to deduce its mysteries. As he couldn't figure it out, he attributed the penalization to the Immortal dynasty, deciding not to dwell on it and continued his path enlightenment. Oppressed by the Immortal dynasty, he did not panic, knowing that as long as his martial master was there, the Immortal dynasty would dare not act rashly. He was also astonished when he heard that his martial master had slain Autumn Equinox Immortal Lord, having met the man whose formidable aura had made a substantial impression. It was unimaginable to Hao that such a powerful being would be powerless before his martial master. He found that no matter how powerful an entity he encountered, how profound a force's heritage was, those seemingly invincible and unconquerable beings were like nothing before his martial master. He could not fathom just how strong his martial master truly was. He even looked forward to how the encounter would unfold if Yangxian Emperor, the current publicly acknowledged #1 under the heavens, were to face his martial master. He believed his martial master could also be the first under the heavens. Thinking of his martial master's strength, and Hao cast aside his distractions, feeling a surge of fervor. He wanted to catch up to his martial master as soon as possible. As the days went by, New Year's Day arrived in the blink of an eye. At dawn, Mystic Valley began preparing for the festival. And Xingtian was chopping wood in the forest, his hair tied high at the back of his head, revealing his stern features. A female disciple approached holding a teapot, looking at Xingtian hesitantly. "Senior brother, are you tired? Would you like some spiritual tea?" She observed Xingtian, her expression turning timidly coy. And Xingtian turned his head with a smile, like ice melting away. He said with a laugh, "As a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator, how could I be tired? However, I cannot refuse junior sister's kindness. Just leave it there and I will bring the teapot back for you." The female disciple was about to say something when the bushes rustled, and a white deer darted past them. A male disciple chased after it, not daring to glance at Xingtian and the female disciple, fearful of interrupting them. And Xingtian looked up and couldn't help but smile. Somewhat vexed but not wanting to bother her senior brother further, the female disciple resignedly placed the teapot down and left. Inside Mystic Valley, Guan stood shoulder to shoulder with Shenzhen, admiring the landscape of the medicine garden. "Now that we're here, tell me, why did you want to come and see this place?" Guan turned his head towards Shenzhen and asked. Shenzhen's gaze wandered as if searching for someone. She murmured, "No, this isn't right." "What's not right?" Guan asked, puzzled. Ever since he had met her that day, he felt something was off about her, as though she was always in a daze. Recently, the presence of reincarnation around Shenzhen had been growing stronger, a sensation Guan had only ever felt around Ji Xiaoyu, which meant that Ji Xiaoyu was awakening memories of her past life. Shenzhen did not answer Guan, but instead she began to walk away, in the direction of the woods wherein Xingtian was. Guan followed her, curious about what Shenzhen was searching for. Could it have something to do with Xingtian? Guan was perplexed, sensing that something strange was happening. When Shenzhen reached the forest, she coincidentally passed by the female disciple, who instinctively looked towards Shenzhen. Attracted by her extraordinary aura and veiled face, the disciple was so mesmerized it was as if she had seen an immortal, leaving her in a daze. Only when Guan walked past her did she snap out of it. Though curious about Shenzhen's identity, she dared not follow. To the new disciples, Guan's authority in Mystic Valley was paramount. Upon seeing Xingtian, Shenzhen's expression subtly changed. And Xingtian seemed to sense something and involuntarily turned his head. When his eyes met Shenzhen's, he frowned, feeling an uncomfortable sensation. Shenzhen's pupils twinkled peculiarly, the corners of her mouth rising beneath her veil. "What's wrong?" Guan came up and asked. Seeing him, and Xingtian immediately raised his hand in salute. Ignoring Guan, Shenzhen said in a strange tone, "Those who evade the heavenly Tao variables?" And Shengshen's frown deepened, suddenly feeling a chill that made him instinctively fear. Guan stood in front of Shenzhen and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" He reached out to touch Shenzhen's shoulder. Snap. Shenzhen suddenly grabbed Guan's wrist, her gaze turned sinister and she spoke coldly, "I'm fine, don't touch me." Demon Shore has developed hostility towards you, seeking to annihilate you. Do you wish to use lifespan detection on it? Chapter 398. The Lifespan of the Free Immortal. Demon Shore? Guan had never heard this name before, so he immediately chose to perform a lifespan detection on it. Demon Shore, Free Immortal Realm 9 Layers 58, 027, 612/500, 000, 000/1, 000, 000, 000, 500 million years of lifespan. With a maximum lifespan of 1 billion years. Why did this person harbor animosity toward him? Could it be that Shenzhen was so bizarre because he was being manipulated by this person? Guan looked at Shenzhen standing before him, feigning astonishment. Shenzhen slightly tilted his head to look at Guan and asked, "Is there a problem?" Although the voice was Shenzhen's, the tone was definitely not. Guan pretended to be tense and replied, "No." Shenzhen let go, then took a step to the side, casting a deep glance at Xingtian that made his heart unease. Shenzhen smiled and then turned away. And Xingtian took a deep breath, moved to Guan's side and seemed about to say something, but Guan raised his hand, signaling him to hold his words. Once Shenzhen had walked out of the grove, Guan's expression turned ice-cold. "Martial Master Shi," and Xingtian cautiously began, the look in Shenzhen's eyes just now filling him with dread, as if a natural predator had set its sights on him, even making him feel a major disaster was imminent. "It doesn't matter." Guan uttered 2 words and upon hearing them and Xingtian immediately relaxed. The phrase "Martial Master" was enough. And Xingtian knew well that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao. Thinking back to the shocking Great Mixed Yuan plate from a few years ago, his spirit was immediately uplifted. With the Martial Master backing him, what was there to fear? His task was to diligently cultivate, striving to surpass and make his Martial Master proud of him. Guan patted Xingtian on the shoulder, encouraging him to continue. And Xingtian looked at Guan's departing figure and raised a hand to his own shoulder, chuckling softly. The upcoming spring festival remained lively. Although Guan was thinking about Demon Shore, he still acted naturally, actively celebrating with his disciples. Because of the intervention a few years ago by Sword Venerable Fudao, which greatly lessened the chaos in Taizong continent, the recent spring festivals had been lively, especially for the disciples of the Supreme Sect, who on such days would rid their minds of worries and start harboring hopes for the future. Until late into the night. Third Medicine Valley in the attic. Guan sat at the desk, eyes closed, his divine thought frenziedly scanning the great heavenly spirit land. Unable to find a cause and effect similar to Shenzhen, he extended his divine thought into the universe. Though Demon Shore's cultivation level was inferior to his, being hated by someone was intolerable. Especially since the opponent hated his original self. He must die to prevent future troubles. That night, the person with the worst mood within the Supreme Sect was none other than the strongest among them. Until the early hours, Guan finally located Demon Shore. The bastard was actually hiding within the silent destruction domain. And he was harboring a large number of evil demons under his command, clearly having some sort of plan. Guan stood up, left the house and walked downstairs. Just as he was downstairs, Ji Xiaoyu emerged from the house and called out to him. "What's up?" Guan asked with a smile. Ji Xiaoyu approached him, sizing him up. Guan touched his own face and asked, "Is there something wrong with me?" Ji Xiaoyu stared into his eyes and said, "There's a sense of death about you. Have you been marked by something corrupt?" Guan feigned nervousness as he asked, "Really? Don't frighten me." He knew Ji Xiaoyu was not wrong in her feeling. Ever since being targeted by Demon Shore the day before, a causal bond had latched onto him and was growing stronger. Guan had not dispelled the cause and effect on him, instead using it to trace Demon Shore. "Perhaps it's just my imagination," Ji Xiaoyu suggested, seeing his panicked reaction. She was puzzled inside. What on earth had happened to Guan? Although she had regained some of her memories, she was not the original self, able to only sense the cause and effect on Guan but not fully see through it. "Always scaring me. Later when I go out, I'll be worried the whole way," Guan complained sullenly. "Then don't go out." Puzzled, with your current resources inexhaustible, why do you still take charge of so many medicine valleys? You don't understand, this is life. To be human, one needs to do things to feel grounded. Humph, you're definitely hiding secrets. Don't you follow me? If I catch you, we are through. This is called privacy rights, understand? Who gave you privacy rights? Granted by the heavens, do you dare to question it? The two began to bicker again, and after Ji Xiaoyu twisted his arm a few times, Guan finally fled. Ji Xiaoyu watched his retreating figure, her brows furrowed deeply, her heart filled with worry, sensing that Guan was heading for great trouble. Guan headed toward the transmission array platform, along the way seeing Long Qing heading out of the valley. "Going out to box again?" Guan asked with a smile. Long Qing, who had been practicing with Shin Shinzi for years, had reached a horrifying level of physical strength. His chi blood was so powerful it even surpassed the void-crossing realm. Sadly, his body contained not a trace of spiritual power. Long Qing stopped in his tracks, faced Guan and nodded slightly. He revealed a proud expression and said, "In half a year my second martial master will take me out to hunt demons. I will be able to fight to my heart's content." Guan did not admonish him, merely nodding before expressing a few words of concern and letting him go. Watching Long Qing walk away, Guan thought of Xingtian. The number of juniors in Medicine Valley had been increasing. He wondered what the scene would look like in 1,000 years. He smiled and continued towards the transmission array platform. Upon reaching Mystic Valley, he glanced at Lu Jiujia and then left alone. He walked through the forest and gradually, a figure emerged from his body, a split of his divine skills. He allowed his split form to replace his original self, while his true form entered a state difficult for immortals to divine. The split form continued forward leisurely, while the original form leapt out of great heavenly spirit land and descended into the silent destruction domain in an incomprehensible manner to living beings. In the depths of the silent destruction domain, where it was incredibly dark without stars, just swells of dense fog as if from the primordial chaos, suffocatingly oppressive. In the darkness stood a city, silent and hanging, resembling a giant armored beast. The surface of the buildings had sharp, towering columns, frighteningly ominous. Inside a grand hall within the city, demonic chi swirled like mist. At the center sat a pool over 30 feet in diameter, the surface a bright red. A figure was meditating in the pool. She was a white-haired woman, her body bare, with long hair cascading down her front into the waters. Her back was as white and smooth as jade, perfectly contoured. This was Demon Shore. She sat with her eyes closed, her face stunningly beautiful, except for a trace of wicked aura between her brows. Suddenly she opened her eyes, exclaiming in surprise, "How did that boy's cause and effect get severed?" Lifting her right hand, she began to deduce. Just then, a hand landed on her fair shoulder. The touch made her Taoist heart tremble and her face drastically change. "Why are you looking for someone?" A raspy voice entered her ears, chilling her to the bone. How could this be? Demon Shore was terrified to find herself completely immobile, her mana almost frozen. She was a free immortal of 9 layers, how could she be so utterly suppressed? Could it be that the other party? Thinking of the legends, she resisted her fear and asked through gritted teeth, Who are you? If you can see great heavenly spirit land with her eyes, could you also hear certain things with her ears? Guan stood behind Demon Shore, leaning slightly forward. Enshrouded with a gray aura, his true appearance concealed, he looked mysteriously formidable. Hearing his words, Demon Shore carefully recalled. She quickly thought of Shenzhen, who often mentioned a person. Sword Venerable Fudao. Her impression of this person was very deep, deeming him a possible free immortal. But she had not calculated against Sword Venerable Fudao. Though free immortals differed, she was one who had stepped into reincarnation tribulation, even if not yet successfully, but at least she was trying. Sword Venerable Fudao, why? The longer Guan's hand pressed down, the more frantic she became. In her perception, Guan's Dao level was unfathomable, and compared to his, her way of cause and effect was insignificant. Guan could feel her fear. He deliberately gave her time to experience panic, fear, and regret. After all, Guan had been worried about her hostility all night. Killing her directly would be too lenient. He gazed down at Demon Shore, taking in her entire form. Nice skin, too bad she provoked him. Guan's gaze intensified as he furiously infused his divine thought into her body, impacting her soul, probing her memory. Demon Shore's body trembled, quickly settling into calmness. The grand hall fell silent, even the swirling demonic chi halted. After a long while, Guan withdrew his divine thought, exerting a slight force with his right hand. Demon Shore instantly turned into ash, a shockwave spreading that caused countless tiny stars to appear in the demonic mist. Those were the shattered remnants of Demon Shore's Tao. Guan pondered over Demon Shore's memories, filled with emotion. So the reincarnation tribulation held such mysteries. Demon Shore was not only reborn herself but also could choose a mortal for rebirth. Shenzhen was her choice, and she chose him after he had grown up. The reason for choosing Shenzhen was his innate talent for the way of cause and effect and the uncertainties surrounding him. Demon Shore couldn't see why the uncertainties around Shenzhen originated, initially not even considering Sword Venerable Fudao. Until years ago, during the Supreme Chaos Disc, she confirmed that Sword Venerable Fudao was the uncertainty surrounding Shenzhen. She was surprised but not shocked. Until Xingtian appeared, using Shenzhen's body, she sensed its cause and effect and was instantly moved. She even wanted to usurp Shengshen's body. Thinking of the seductive she-demon becoming a man, Guan felt somewhat awkward. Fortunately, in Demon Shore's memories she was always a woman. Otherwise he would feel awkward seeing Shenzhen in the future. You have successfully seized 61,098,203 years of lifespan from Demon Shore, Free Immortal Realm, 9 layers. A prompt appeared before Guan, seizing over 60 million years of lifespan in one go. Not bad. Worthy of a free immortal. Would killing Taoist hidden immortals in the future bring in hundreds of millions of years of lifespan? Guan looked forward with anticipation, but for now he did not want to confront Taoist hidden immortals. He would rather accumulate lifespan through medicinal herbs. It was safer to grow stronger unnoticed and avoid much hatred. Chapter 399 Supreme Demon Realm. The memories from Demon Shore were vast, and the greatest help to Guan was in her understanding of reincarnation tribulation. Reincarnation tribulation indeed allows one to be reborn into different times and spaces, even into the past, but whether it's the past or the future, the main Bodhi's power cannot intervene. When the reincarnated being dies or exerts the power of the main body, it will be forcibly expelled back by the heavenly Tao. This reminded Guan of the time when Ji Xiaoyu in the 7-star spirit realm had used the power of a primordial Taoist talisman and then quickly disappeared. It seemed she was expelled by the reincarnation tribulation. This deepened Guan's understanding of the heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao more closely resembles a collection of rules and the grand Tao, meticulous and domineering. Guan stopped pondering and turned her gaze toward the interior of the great hall. The hall was vast, yet there were many stark differences hidden within. Those huge stone pillars were also inlaid with numerous special spirit stones. This city was none other than Demon City. According to the memories of Demon Shore, there were many such cities in the silent destruction domain. Although there was no stronger existence above Demon Shore, all the demon cities were remnants of power left by the Supreme Demon Realm. The Supreme Demon Realm had once been extremely powerful, aiming to devour the great heaven and earth, but was later struck down by a mysterious entity that slayed the realm master, causing it to shatter. At that time Demon Shore was not yet fully grown. 1,000,000 demons hid within the demon city. Although these demons seemed no different from the heavenly demons to the creatures of the great heaven and earth, there were also many powers standing within the silent destruction domain, and they did not trespass into the territories of the blood prison Great Saint. Guan decided to eradicate the root of the problem and eliminate all these demons. Whenever creatures from the great heaven and earth passed near the demon city, they never met a good fate. Demon Shore even dared to attack passing free immortals, though the free immortals had their own means to escape. The attacked free immortal was actually the ancient immortal emperor from the Immortal dynasty. Approaching noon, Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley. He called up his attribute panel. Name, Guan, lifespan, 650/1-954-210-604, physique, mixed yuan refined void body, cultivation level, perfect Taoist hidden immortal realm. By slaying the million evil demons in the demon city, he gained nearly 500 million years of lifespan, making this trip an enormous harvest. Looking at his lifespan approaching 2 billion years, Guan felt wonderfully good. Of course, the most important thing was that he had removed a source of worry. As Guan encountered disciples along the way, he would smile and ask them a few questions, leaving the disciples surprised and honored. Now the number of disciples in the Third Medicine Valley exceeded 3,000, and many, even those who had reached the Foundation Establishment realm, were willing to stay. As the Supreme Sect grew stronger, the treatment in the Third Medicine Valley also continued to rise, even higher than that of many intersect halls. The disciples all respected Guan, not for his status or cultivation level, but because he treated each disciple without pretense. Even when they heard Guan enjoyed reading common books, they found him all the more approachable since Guan did not coerce the female disciples, and he was well regarded. When Guan arrived at his pavilion, Ji Xiaoyu suddenly came out, her expression strange. "What's wrong now?" Guan asked in feigned dejection. Ji Xiaoyu replied, "The death energy around you has disappeared. Who did you go see this morning?" Guan looked around, then took 2 steps forward and mysteriously said, "You scared me, so I had to ask Sword Venerable Fu Dao for help. He cast a spell to keep me safe at the cost of 300 years of my lifespan." Ji Xiaoyu believed the first part of his statement, but she couldn't help but roll her eyes at the last sentence. Mortals will be mortals. With Sword Venerable Fu Dao's cultivation, how could he covet your 300 years of lifespan? Such a narrow view, it's laughable even when you boast. Ji Xiaoyu's words were venomous, unaware that this was exactly the effect Guan wanted. "You look down on me? In 30 years the East River may flow west. Do not belittle the poor. Change 30 to thousands. Get inside, I need to sort you out." Guan pushed Ji Xiaoyu into the house and she did not resist, her face even breaking into a smile. An hour later, Guan came out of her house. Passing by, an XN winked and teased Guan, causing him to glare at her. Blood Prison Great Saint watched from under a distant tree, sighing sentimentally, "The master indeed leads a charming life. Once 1,000 years pass, I too must enjoy the local customs of the great heavenly spirit land." The spring breeze was caressing, the weather cool, and all living things were awakening their vitality, even the clouds that shrouded the continent's sky had dissipated some. The Supreme Sect, basking in the prestige of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, continued to develop, but the struggles of the world grew more intense. Every moment, cultivators from the Immortal dynasty and the Holy Court were fighting, with more and more territories and powers being drawn into the fray. Half a year sped by swiftly. Guan stood by the window watching Long Qing follow Shen Xinzi out of the valley. Apart from his previous experiences in the Juyuan world, this was Long Qing's first time leaving the Supreme Sect. Although he was just practicing on the Taizong continent, the sight of the young man's excitement gave Guan a distinct feeling. Feeling reluctant to let him go? Ji Xiaoyu's teasing voice came from downstairs. Guan replied, "How could that be? It just reminded me of some old friends." "Do you wish for the people by your side to accompany you forever?" "No, not really. If they leave, they leave. There will always be newcomers. I just feel nostalgic about how quickly they grow up. They become capable of standing on their own in the blink of an eye." "Him? What do you mean by newcomers? When I'm gone, there will be new ones." "What are you talking about? You haven't even outlasted the old ones yet." Boom! The attic began to tremble slightly. Outside the courtyard, the Blood Prison Great Saint, who was lying down asleep, turned his head. Such noise couldn't affect him. He was already used to it. An hour later, Guan, accompanied by an Xan and the Blood Prison Great Saint, left the Third Medicine Valley. Today they were heading to Qinya Valley. On the way, an Xian spoke of the rising talents on the continent. From time to time, a peerless genius would emerge, and individuals like An Hao, Li Ye, and Wu Ju had already been forgotten by many, just as Guan had once been unaware of Shen Qianni. Guan rode on the back of the Blood Prison Great Saint, holding a book in his hand, occasionally echoing an Xn. He also paid attention to the recent happenings in the world. Compared to the world hundreds of years ago, the standard for genius had risen. The cultivators and Xin referred to as geniuses had cultivation levels at the very least within the void-crossing realm. Hundreds of years ago, those of the void-crossing realm were considered great cultivators, old monsters. Nowadays the nirvana realm was no longer a secret known to just a few. An Xin spoke of the affairs of the world with no longing in her tone, only anticipation. She didn't want to go out, she just wanted to become more formidable than those people, to prove that staying by her master's side was the best choice. They chatted and laughed along the way, making the journey seem less tedious. When they arrived at Jianghu Valley, they saw a group of young and proud cultivators. When Guan and his companions appeared, they attracted the attention of most. Guan saw LV Xian among them. It had been quite a while since he had seen LV Xian because every time LV Badian met him, he would mention LV Xian, making Guan occasionally keep track of LV Xian's progress. LV Xian had always been highly talented, and coupled with favorable circumstances, he now possessed the cultivation level of the mystic heart realm. He looked from afar at Guan with a joyous expression on his face. Guan nodded slightly towards him, then dismounted and walked toward Li Zuando's courtyard. An Xian went with the blood prison great saint to meet the three monkey demons. Chapter 400 Immortal Legacy All Living Beings. Aspirations. Li Xiandao fell into deep thought, and Guan did not offer his own opinion, since both choices had pros and cons for the common folk. To remain content with the status quo would invite future crises. To be discontent would make life harder for the current and future generations. Guan's protection of the continent's beings already showed his benevolence, but he would not worry about the daily lives of all living beings every day. In any case, when asked about worldly affairs, Guan's role was simply to provide options. The ultimate decision was up to Li Xiandao, with whom the consequences lay. Li Xiandao was lost in contemplation, and Guan did not disturb him. His gaze drifted outside the courtyard. LV Xian, who was instructing someone in their cultivation, glanced towards Guan from time to time. When their eyes met, Guan could tell he was excited. Guan was suspicious, but he was not in a hurry. He would discuss it with Li Xiandao later. Usually he did not need to spend much time on cultivation, so his pace of life was slow. He was not in a rush about most things, he could handle them one by one. Li Xiandao was not forever lost in his own world. He came back to reality and started chatting with Guan about Li Ya. Li Ya was the link between the two, and speaking of him prompted more conversation. After an hour, Li Xiandao suddenly said, LV Xian has been talking about you non-stop. He specifically came back from overseas to see you, but insisted I come along. He wants to meet you but also fears you. What's that about? Guan pretended to be puzzled and asked, why does he want to meet me? And why would he fear me? That shouldn't be. Have I treated him poorly? While speaking, he looked curiously at LV Xian, who immediately smiled back at him. Li Xiandao stared at Guan meaningfully and said, Guan, what kind of relationship do we have? There's no need to hide things from each other. Guan's expression alternated between clouds and sunshine. He took a deep breath and said, to be honest, there are indeed hidden relationships behind me. If I reveal them, I will be punished and those who know will die. After saying this, he patted his shoulder. Li Xiandao immediately squinted his eyes and chuckled, then let's not talk about it anymore. Inside, however, his mind was in turmoil. This boy. Upon reflecting, Li Xiandao had an epiphany. After Guan joined the Supreme Sect, Sword Venerable Fudao appeared, primarily active around areas close to Guan. He recalled Li Ya's sudden surge in strength over the years which he could never explain. Now it all made sense. It seemed Guan had arranged for Sword Venerable Fudao to look after Li Ya. Li Zuando's gaze towards Guan heated up, making Guan quite uncomfortable. Without guessing, Guan knew what Li Xiandao might be planning. He did not clarify. If Li Xiandao wanted to act under the name of Sword Venerable Fudao, he did not mind giving Li a pat on the shoulder. It depended on whether Li Xiandao knew his limits. You go meet LV Xian, I don't have other matters here, Li Xiandao said, waving his hand with a smile. Guan stood up, bowed to him and then walked towards the courtyard gate. Seeing him leave, LV Xian immediately greeted him and pulled Guan towards a corner of Jianghu Valley. What's so secretive? Asked Guan. LV Xian whispered, I have something great and it won't disappoint you. Something great? Guan's interest was piqued and he followed Lv away. Lv led Guan into a cave, his personal cave. He had crafted it here in Chinya Valley for fear of being seen by others, setting up very advanced restrictions. After entering the cave, Lv activated the restrictions, isolating it completely. Guan, feeling irritated, asked, "All this secrecy? Do we even have to hide it from His Majesty?" "Of course we do. If he knew, he'd go mad." Lv replied, his face displaying excitement. He then pulled Guan into the deepest chamber of the cave, walked up to a stone table, and took out an irregularly shaped stone slab that seemed like a large fragment. At first glance, it appeared plain with no inscriptions or runes. As he set down the slab, Guan suddenly understood something significant. His expression turned peculiar. The stone slab actually contained heavenly Tao destiny. Moreover, it was purer and more unsettling than the heavenly Tao inheritance obtained by Jianghu from the Heaven sect. Its destiny emitted an indescribable oppressive force. Even Guan, the Taoist hidden immortal, felt an instinctive wariness and a glimmer of desire. He wanted to possess this heavenly Tao destiny. Yet, as this desire emerged, his wariness grew. Something was off. Guan looked at Lv and asked, "What is this?" He couldn't discern the cause and effect of this stone slab. This indicated that the origin of the slab was even stronger than the Taoist hidden immortal himself. At this realization, Guan almost wished Lv would take this item away and keep it far from him. What kind of thing was this? Trying to harm him? Lv, with an excited smile, said, "This is an inheritance I stumbled upon. You might not believe it, but this contains the legacy of a true immortal, a real godlike immortal, not something any immortal dynasty or holy court could compare to." Immortal legacy? Guan frowned. Neither Lu Han nor Long Zhan had encountered a real immortal through the ages, although they'd met many who claimed to belong to the immortal or divine race. This had led Guan to always believe that the so-called immortals were merely more powerful beings. Lv continued, "The inheritance here only cares about talent, not cultivation level. I failed, but I think you should give it a try." "Why should it be me? There are so many geniuses," Guan hesitated to ask. Lv glared at him and said impatiently, "There are many geniuses, but the only one I have a good relationship with is you. I wouldn't give it to Jianghu. You have supreme talent, yet you can restrain your competitive spirit and live in seclusion here. I think you becoming an immortal would be better, at least you wouldn't threaten me and you are indeed very good to your friends." Although Guan was curious, he felt that this matter was very dangerous, so he said, "Actually, His Majesty's talent is also very strong." After hearing this, Lv eyes brightened as he said, "You noticed it too? I thought I was the only one who knew." But don't tell him I know." "Haha, don't worry. He still thinks he's hidden himself well enough, not realizing that you are the deepest enigma. Think about it, it makes sense that Sword Venerable Fudao has always stayed at Supreme Sect, certainly to cultivate you. And Hao claims to be a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, but he left and Sword Venerable Fudao is still here. That must mean he's just riding on your coattails." Lv chuckled, truly believing that Guan was stronger than Jianghu. He had sparred with both of them, and Guan had given him the greatest sense of oppression and psychological shadow. He even believed that Guan was the #1 genius under the heavens. Hearing this, Guan fell into silence, his gaze fixed on a stone slab. Wait, should he use his lifespan to simulate this? Guan thought it feasible as touching the stone slab directly seemed too dangerous. His mind made up, he immediately began to simulate. Simulating the inheritance will consume 1 million years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? That much? Guan hesitated, but looking at the stone slab he was really tempted. Forget it. Take the plunge. While Lv continued his incessant chatter, Guan chose to continue, and then his consciousness entered a vast white space. Everything was blank, and below his feet, grass first emerged, rapidly expanding, and mountains appeared in the distance in all directions. The world was vast and the sky magnificent. Guan looked ahead and saw atop the mountains a dazzling orb of light, immensely gigantic, much larger than any mountain on earth. Within the light orb there stood a towering figure, 10,000 zhang in height, adorned in armor, wielding a divine weapon, exuding a domineering aura that overwhelmed all living beings. Upon seeing this figure, Guan felt threatened, and he couldn't help but think of Black Profound Emperor, whom Lu Han encountered, and Annihilation God Emperor, whom Long Zhan encountered. Their auras were similar. What realms were they actually in? Mortal spirit, having seen the heavenly Tao, why not kneel? A majestic voice rang out, but Guan did not kneel since it was just a simulation, and he asked, "What inheritance is this?" "This is the Heavenly Tao Immortal Position inheritance. To gain my approval you must defeat me." Defeat. Chapter 401 Shapeshifting. You can keep it and accept the inheritance when you are strong enough. Guan stared at LV Xian, speaking earnestly, fearing that LV Xian would forsake his greatest opportunity. At the moment, the Heavenly Tao Immortal Position proved stronger than the Holy Court, the Immortal Dynasty, and even the Silent Destruction Domain. As a mortal, if LV Xian missed it, finding a stronger chance in the future would be almost impossible. LV Xian couldn't rely on stealing lifespan to become stronger like him. LV Xian raised an eyebrow and said, "What do you mean you think I can't rely on myself? You can't, at least not beyond this inheritance." Bullshit. LV Xian erupted in fury, his terrifying aura exploding like a volcano, startling the entire Tianya Valley. Suddenly, Guan raised his hand and pressed it on his shoulder, instantly dispersing his aura. LV Xian's eyes widened. He knew Guan was definitely stronger than himself, but to be suppressed so easily rendered unable to move. In that moment he recalled a duel between them hundreds of years ago. This moment was exactly like that one. Guan looked at him calmly and asked, "Can you keep this stone tablet now?" LV Xian couldn't answer. He was unable to speak. "Just blink if you agree." Hearing Guan's words, LV Xian blinked frantically. Guan withdrew his hand and LV Xian breathed a sigh of relief, gasping for air. He looked at Guan with fear. He had learned from Li Xiandao that Guan was younger than him, yet how had he cultivated to such a level? Compared to Guan he was practically useless. Guan smiled and said, "Quickly put it away. When you become an immortal, if I can't catch up to you or have troubles, you'll be my backup." Upon hearing this, pride replaced the awkwardness on LV Xian's face. He patted his chest and said, "Naturally, I'm not your equal now, but I will surpass you one day and then I'll have your back." Despite Guan not always being nice to him and often scaring him, wasn't that a form of care? In the past, when he initiated provocations towards Guan, Guan didn't mind, but if someone else treated him that way he wouldn't be so merciful. And for Guan to return such an important inheritance to him, he was truly a man worth respecting. LV Xian stored the stone tablet and Guan put his arm around his shoulder as they walked toward the cave entrance. "By the way, your father misses you. When are you going to visit him?" "Him? That old undying man, if I visit him, I won't be able to help but kill him." "Nonsense, blood is thicker than water. He hasn't tortured or mistreated you. Why talk of killing? If you really wanted to kill him, could he even stand up to you? He's hundreds of years old, why act like a child?" "You don't understand." "Of course I don't understand, I have no parents." "Well, I envy you for that." "Hey you brat, are you looking for a spanking? Just go back to the Supreme Sect and see your father. He treats me well and is always talking about you. My ears are almost calloused. If you go, he'll teach you a divine skill that will definitely enhance your strength." "Really?" Guan never lie. And so, the two chatted and walked out of the cave. Back in the valley, Guan reverted to being an ordinary nascent soul realm cultivator, while LV Xian continued to exude the arrogance of a supreme youth. A month later, LV Badian came to find Guan, extremely happy, pulling him to drink because LV Xian had come to see him. Although the father and son were still not on the best of terms, their relationship had begun to improve. He was touched to learn from LV Xian that it was Guan who had asked LV Xian to see him. This youngster always seemed impatient with his ramblings, but in his heart, he remembered his father's love. LV Badian looked at Guan with eyes full of fondness, as if looking at another son. Guan didn't refuse as he was just in the mood for a drink. Perhaps this was what meant by, "With great power comes great responsibility." He not only had to save the world, he also had to help people handle domestic affairs. How fortunate the immortal cultivation world was to have me. Filled with self-emotion, Guan then competed with LV Badian in a drinking contest and finally LV Badian was defeated. They were drinking high-level spiritual wine. It was alright for Guan to show off his strength a bit, especially since LV Badian was not considered strong in the Supreme Sect. Taking advantage of LV Badian's drunken stupor, Guan went downstairs. Just as he descended, Ji Xiaoyu walked out of the room and said to him, "Come in." Guan shook his head, "No thanks, your strength isn't enough. Practice some more." Last time, to teach Ji Xiaoyu a lesson, Guan had played Go with her in her room for an hour and beat her decisively, which left her quite unconvinced, and now she would think about game strategies even during her practice. Just one more game and you'll see if it's enough. Ha. Guan couldn't be bothered with her and continued walking toward the distance. Ji Xiaoyu watched his back, took a deep breath, and thought about the cost of losing the game last time. It made her teeth itch with frustration. Before the game they had made a deal that if she won, Guan would focus more on his own practice, and if Guan won he would pinch her face. Well, pinch it as it may be, he really dared to do it strongly. She looked at Guan's back, her mind full of confusion. Why in the world was his Go skill so strong? She finally understood why Nine-Finger Divine Lord couldn't maintain his composure in the Immortal Path realm when facing Guan. After walking some distance, Guan leaped up, aiming for the outer gate city. It had been ages since he last strolled in the city. Today he might as well reinforce the sword intent on the heavenly repair platform. Too many people had been comprehending his sword intent, causing it to continuously weaken. Recently even a divine immortal of wondrous dharma had come to study it. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, another decade passed. That day, in the deep sea hidden spirit palace, Guan lay on a chair on the open ground, holding the supreme secret records. The deep sea dragon carp was beside him practicing the heaven and earth primordial skill. This skill had been upgraded, but being too complex was in fact not beneficial, and his disciples were all practicing it. How could he allow the deep-sea dragon carp's treatment to exceed theirs? Even among his underlings Tian Yaoer was the most important. The deep-sea dragon carp opened its eyes, flew next to Guan and asked cautiously, "Master, I think I can shapeshift, what do you think I should turn into?" Guan turned over, his back facing it, and said, "Whatever you want." He didn't care if a male demon wanted to shapeshift, it didn't matter even if it didn't. The deep-sea dragon carp caught a glimpse of a picture on the supreme secret records, pondered for a while, then turned and left. 2 ancient hours later, Guan left. By the time he returned, it was already half a month later. Upon return he was taken aback. He saw a figure at the entrance of the hidden spirit palace. For a moment he thought he saw a naked creature from the demon shore. But this fellow was not a female demon. When the deep-sea dragon carp turned to look at Guan, its stunningly beautiful face flashed a captivating smile, its long hair reaching its waist, and its skin as white as snow, shimmeringly. He swayed his body as he walked towards Guan. Guan immediately threw a robe at him. "Put this on immediately." Guan really wanted to scold him. A male demon turning into a female form, what was this nonsense? Absolutely disgusting. The deep-sea dragon carp, hearing the dissatisfaction in his voice, hurriedly put on the robe, looking at Guan nervously like he had done something wrong, his exceptionally beautiful face filled with a look of grievance. Chapter 402 Future. After a bit of tossing and turning, Guan looked at the deep-sea dragon carp, robed in white, and still felt awkward about it. The deep-sea dragon carp had tied up its hair, giving off the impression of a woman disguised as a man, because since it had shapeshifted, it could not change its appearance again. It could only be like this. The more Guan looked at him, the more familiar he seemed. Wait, wasn't this the same woman that Guan had encountered in the Supreme Secret Records? Guan spoke up, "From now on, don't dress as a woman anymore. There's no need to please me that way, I don't like it." The deep-sea dragon carp quickly nodded, although internally he was puzzled. If Guan did not like it, why did he read such books? Seeing how wrong the creature looked, Guan began to instruct him on the practice of spells. Hearing that there were spells to practice, the deep-sea dragon carp immediately perked up, sweeping away his feelings of aggrievement and simultaneously gaining some insight. Although the shape-shifting of the deep-sea dragon carp was absurd, it didn't affect Guan's life. He already had 3 female demons, and no matter what form the deep-sea dragon carp took, it couldn't pique his interest. After spending half a day in the hidden spirit palace, Guan then went to the heavenly Phoenix Mountain, where he could harvest a batch of high-rank medicinal herbs from the outer world cave, which should grant him tens of millions of years to his lifespan. There was no distinction between day and night in the outer world cave. After harvesting the herbs, Guan began to instruct the 3 female Tian Yaoer on their cultivation. Years had passed, and Tian Yaoer's cultivation level had reached the 9th layer of the mystic heart realm, and she was soon to assault the Mahayana realm. Her talent was exceptional, and with the abundance of high-rank medicinal herbs shared by Guan, her progress in cultivation naturally soared. Tianqing and Tianbai were less gifted than her and had just broken through to the unification realm. Their pace of cultivation was already fast, at least faster than that of demons, whose cultivation was not as quick as that of cultivators of human race. The demons' advantage lay in their long lifespans, but under Guan's care, the three demons' cultivation speed was comparable to that of top human prodigies. After sparring for an ancient hour, the three demons were depleted of their demonic power. Their demonic power was considered abundant within their respective realms, but facing Guan they had to go all out. Watching them exhausted, lying on the ground, drenched in sweat, Guan hovered midair, pointing out their weaknesses. After a while, the three demons gathered around him, inquiring about the outside world. They still vividly remembered the recent attack by the Immortal Lord during the Mid-Autumn Festival. His booming voice and imposing pressure. They were curious about the types of changes unfolding in the outside world. The Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court are fighting fiercely. Not long ago, I heard that an immortal spirit effortlessly moved an entire sea area with one hand, with billions of creatures at his mercy. He fought against the great cultivator of the Holy Court with the ocean in his grasp. It was earth-shattering. Guan casually picked an event to recount, listening intently as the three demons did. What he spoke of were actual events. As time passed, casualties of the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court escalated, deepening the hate between them. If this continued, a battle that would sweep across the great heaven and earth was inevitable. Guan had calculated somewhat, fearing that the fight might cause heaven and earth to split apart, but with so many variables, he couldn't clearly discern all the choices of the free immortal or predict what was within the reincarnation tribulation of Xingtian. For the time being, it was impossible to see who would win or lose. Guan wasn't too worried though, as Taizong continent, where he resided, hadn't suffered much from the disturbances. For him that was enough. As they listened to the tales of the world's vicissitudes, Tian Yaoer's heart yearned, but she did not propose to venture out. Her strength was still insufficient. It was mere curiosity. Seeing their interest, Guan spoke of a few more events. If it could strengthen their will to pursue immortal cultivation, Guan was naturally pleased. Snowflakes fell, marking the end of the year. The end of Lu Jujia's destined life had come. Guan and Lu Jujia sat at the edge of a cliff, overlooking Mystic Valley. Big brother, 600 years ago, did you ever think that Mystic Valley could ever achieve such prosperity? Lu Jujia asked with a chuckle while stroking his beard, eyes filled with many distant images that transitioned from hazy to clear. From here one could see disciples in the forests outside Mystic Valley, cultivated demon beasts, various brightly colored groves, all within a dozen miles of Mystic Valley's domain, thriving and booming. Guan replied, actually I feel there isn't much difference between now and the past because some people are still here, precisely you're still here. The original acquaintances of Mystic Valley had dwindled to Lu Jujia alone. Once he passed on, Mystic Valley would become a closed chapter to Guan, or at least not as significant in his heart. Lu Jujia turned to look at Guan, feeling that his big brother's profile was still so youthful, as if time had left no trace on him. Big brother, do you remember Suhan? Lu Jujia suddenly asked. Guan glanced at him replying, how could I forget? Until now, no other disciple has taken a more crooked path than him. Although many old acquaintances had passed away, there were still many who were alive, keeping Guan from feeling too lonely. He got down from his mount and walked shoulder to shoulder with Jiang Qiong. Jiang Qiong did not hide the purpose of her visit. Some disciples from the Juhua sect had a conflict with those from the Supreme sect and ended up being captured. She was here to demand their release. But the situation was complicated. The Supreme sect claimed that it was the Ji family who captured the Juhua sect disciples, due to a death feud, and they were reluctant to interfere. Guan was unconcerned, it's a trivial matter. When it comes to connections I still have some clout. The guy who just got drunk was saved by me once. Chapter 403 Heavenly Dao Merit, is that so? Then I'll wait for you to help me, Jiang Qiong said to Guan, her smile all crinkles. Guan glanced at her and said, hold on, your real purpose isn't targeting the Ji family again, is it? Humph, with all the people coming and going, aren't you afraid of being overheard by the Ji family? Jiang Qiong sneered. There were indeed many people on the street, but there were just as many who talked big like Guan, so he was not afraid at all. Within the Supreme sect, who would dare to make things difficult for me? Guan declared with feigned arrogance, then immediately flashed a smile and greeted someone who was approaching. Watching the adaptable Gu and Jiang Qiong couldn't help but want to laugh. After Gu An's acquaintance had moved on, Jiang Qiong teased, "You know, I've heard that Sect Master LV wants to groom you as the next sect leader. I thought he was joking before, but now it seems you really might have a shot." Guan shook his head and said, "Forget about it, he hasn't mentioned this for many years. Since the integration of the overseas cultivators, LV Batian rarely brought up the position of sect leader. It wasn't that he was reluctant to let go, but rather he increasingly found himself not his own master, with the power of the sect leader being diluted. Moreover, appointing Guan as sect leader would only bring trouble to Guan. You're just not diligent in your cultivation," Jiang Qiong said irritably. Over 600 years ago, she had noticed Gu An's extraordinary talent. Unfortunately, no matter how much she persuaded him, the lad was content to linger in the medicine garden, idly while away his days, fond of reading leisurely books, unwilling to cultivate diligently. "What do you know? My approach is also a form of cultivation. You'll understand sooner or later, qi absorption cultivation is the most foolish method." "Should I look forward to that? Don't pretend to forget when the time comes. You seem to understand women quite well." "I have no choice, I've gained many of my connections thanks to this face of mine. Naturally, I understand women after interacting with so many of them. I really want to seal you in a coffin for a lifetime." The two chatted and strolled through the streets. Jiang Qiong's mind quickly wandered elsewhere. Coming for help was true, but it wasn't her main purpose. She had come to find Sword Venerable Fudao. As night fell in the woods outside the Supreme Sect, Jiang Qiong stood under a tree frowning, the breeze stirring her robes, not feeling the cold at all. Her heart was in tumult. Centuries ago, when Sword Venerable Fudao had endowed her with the authority over the Ghost Mother of Ephemera, she used it to establish the Juhua sect, rising from a helpless, solitary figure to a formidable force in the immortal cultivation world. "You have no need to worry," Guan said, trying to comfort her. Ji Xiaoyu shook her head. "You don't understand this feeling." With that she turned and left. Watching her go, Guan couldn't help but think of her previous incarnation as the third Mississippi. He suddenly felt some regret. Perhaps it was from experiences in his youth, but he held complex feelings for the third Miss, gratitude and perhaps affection as well. Maybe Ji Xiaoyu was right. At least in this life she seemed like a different person compared to the third Mississippi. In that case he had yet to see the third Miss for the last time. Perhaps at the end of her life, the third Miss never even thought of him. Guan shook his head and chastised himself for being sentimental. He picked up the Green Hero Travelogue and began to cultivate his mind. It was Xian Tianyi's free-spirited literary style that influenced Guan, helping him dispel the meaningless sorrows in his heart multiple times. Those who were gone had passed away, it was important to cherish those who were alive. Life must go on. Such were Guan's thoughts as he soon became engrossed in a story of an isolated island. As soon as these words were spoken, many echoed in agreement, even beseeching the Holy Minister. The Holy Minister was already at the 9th layer of the divine thought true immortal realm, just one step away from becoming a free immortal. "Why must it be the Holy Minister and not the Holy God?" someone questioned, casting the great hall into silence. The Holy Minister glanced at him, not in anger but instead inquired, "Does anyone else have a differing opinion?" The cultivators of the Holy Court within the hall exchanged glances, but no one else made a sound. With a thunderous boom, a bolt of heavenly lightning struck from nowhere, hitting the person who had just raised the objection, reducing him instantly to ashes. The Holy Minister stood up and declared, "Since you all wish for me to attain the status of a free immortal, let us then prepare the plan. I will amass the chi fortune of the Holy Court to verify the path of the free immortal. Let the citizens of the Holy Court witness my process of tribulation crossing, to broaden their horizons." Many in the hall wore ugly expressions. Even if they feared the Holy Minister's power and dared not object, how could they not be angry in their hearts at the sight of the Holy Minister executing a court official at will? In the end, led by someone taking the initiative, everyone began to thank the Holy Minister on behalf of the citizens of the Holy Court. The Holy Minister looked up, and the vision of a starry sky emerged above him. That fellow should be returning soon. When he comes back, that will be my opportunity for a breakthrough, the holy minister murmured to himself. Elsewhere, in the mystic valley of the supreme sect, Guan read a book in the forest while an Xan sat nearby practicing her martial arts, glancing towards an Xingtian not far away, practicing with his sword, while Jianghu watched him closely. Why choose to practice with a sword? It doesn't seem impressive enough, mused an Xan, her gaze following to Guan. Guan turned a page and said, Everyone makes their own choices, let him be. Master, what weapon suits me? She asked. Are you not practicing the sword? I feel the sword doesn't suit me. I like magic artifacts like the brush in your hand, they're more novel. Then you should think about it yourself, don't ask me. Guan replied dismissively, then stood up and tucked the green hero travelogue into his chest. An Xan followed him to her feet, her voice filled with grievance. How could I possibly come up with one? I follow your guidance in my training, help me think of something. Guan did not respond but looked up instead. The sky was a brilliant blue, and a streak of white light flashed across rapidly, disappearing in an instant. Another has arrived, it seems things will get even more chaotic, Guan thought to himself. That streak of white light just now was unmistakably a free immortal. Chapter 406. Lifespan Samsara, the ultimate. The proclamation of the mortal world god startled all living beings under heaven, but the reaction within the supreme sect was minor. This kind of proclamation had occurred several times before, and given that the Taizong continent hadn't been impacted by the chaos that plagued the greater world, the majority of cultivators who heard the mortal world god's words were merely curious and did not believe. The beings of Taizong continent had their own faith, and that was in Sword Venerable Fudao. Could the mortal world god possibly be as formidable as Sword Venerable Fudao? Shenzhen also expressed such sentiment, looking down on the mortal world god. I've drawn him and I've drawn the divine skills of Sword Venerable Fudao, and I truly feel that Sword Venerable Fudao is stronger, Shenzhen earnestly said. Guan helplessly said, regardless, the fact that he can shout to the whole world means his cultivation level is beyond our imagination. We should discuss this less. Shenzhen glared at Guan and said, Look at how timid you are, what's there to be afraid of? Would he dare to come to Sword Venerable Fudao's territory? Sword Venerable Fudao only protects all living beings, he doesn't intervene in personal grievances. That depends on the cultivation level of the visitor. With an existence like the mortal world god, it's impossible that he came for just any individual. Sword Venerable Fudao certainly won't give him the chance. You speak as if you understand Sword Venerable Fudao the best. Nonsense, I definitely understand him better than you do. Watching Shenzhen's vehement demeanor, Guan realized he couldn't out-argue her. It seemed like no one understood Sword Venerable Fudao better than she did. Guan, not wishing to argue further, changed the subject and talked about other matters while his divine thought reached out to the mortal world god. The mortal world god had established a dojo on a straight and majestic mountain peak, and had taken 100 heaven and earth flying immortals as land immortals, seemingly preparing to promote the divine Tao. These 100 heaven and earth flying immortals came from different sects, each sought out by the mortal world god. It is worth mentioning that Baizia of Mortal World Peak was also among them. If not for Baizia's invitation, Guan would not have joined Mortal World Peak, but since demonstrating his superior strength, their relationship had become distant, with Baizia intentionally keeping his distance. Guan didn't know his state of mind, all he could do was to oblige him. Being a land immortal under the mortal world god was in Baizia's view the greatest opportunity of his life. However, after Guan's deduction, this path was more perilous than fortunate, as the mortal world god was destined to confront the immortal dynasty. At age 21, you encountered an injured dragon girl by the seashore, lying on death's door, begging for your help. Will you choose to save her? No. You chose not to save her. The dragon girl died of a broken heart upon your refusal. Her clan brother, the Azure Dragon, leapt out from the depths of the sea and upon seeing the scene, suspected you of killing the dragon girl. He attacked you and after a fierce battle, you tore the Azure Dragon to shreds. Guan suddenly felt some regret. Why did rejecting to save her lead to even bigger trouble? At age 22, you faced a massive pursuit by an army of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, trapped on an island and cornered. Using your lifespan evolution ability, you enhanced your path of physical cultivation, and after days of fighting, you broke through the encirclement and condensed your mystic heart. Mystic heart realm at 22 years old? Just how many creatures had this person killed? Guan couldn't see the specifics of each year, but judging by Extreme's growth rate, his killer instinct must have been tremendous. In the years that followed, Extreme was constantly haunted by the Dragon Palace from where the Dragon Girl had come. He battled ferociously, slaying dragons and demons, with astonishing progress each year that left Guan both thrilled and terrified. Strength can be brittle. It wasn't until he was 40 that Guan finally saw a chance to make a choice. At age 40, having stepped into the immortal path, you stormed into the astonishing Dragon Palace and slaughtered widely. Carrying the severed head of the Dragon Crown Prince, you confronted the grievously wounded Dragon King who knelt before you begging for mercy. Will you choose to spare the Dragon King? To have come this far, it was natural to eliminate the roots as well. Moreover, the long-standing grudge between Extreme and the Dragon Palace wasn't his fault. How could he be blamed when the palace insisted on holding Extreme responsible for the Dragon Girl's death, leading to an ever-growing hatred? Guan chose no. You executed the Dragon King and started to cultivate and heal in the Dragon Palace. At age 50, you learned the strongest legacy of the Dragon Palace, the dragon's divine heaven-reaching record. At age 51, you arrived at the Fallen Star continent and made the acquaintance of a cultivator, who invited you to join Mortal World Peak. Do you choose to join? Mortal World Peak? Finally, something familiar. Guan immediately chose to join. You joined Mortal World Peak, astonishing the high ranks of Mortal World Peak in the assessment, and the Peak Master sought to take you as a disciple. Do you choose to accept? Accept. You became a disciple of Bai Chi Dao, the Taoist Lord of Mortal World Peak, and started to focus on your cultivation. Chapter 407. Battling through life, dominating the ancient and modern times. How fierce. Guan admired the extreme performance he witnessed. He couldn't help but say that the manipulation of lifespan samsara had been pushed to the limit. Accumulate lifespan crazily, evolve crazily, and even evolve during battles, truly like a madman. Moreover, no matter the choices this person made, as long as anyone dared to make a move on him, he would show no mercy. Guan looked forward to seeing more of Extreme, just unsure if Extreme had existed in the past or was from the future. At the age of 65, your understanding of the divine skill's heavenly record has deepened, and your soul has transformed. At the age of 67, you broke into the cave of an ancient immortal, endured many hardships, and seized the inheritance of the ancient holy court. You have obtained the heavenly Tao inheritance and can claim the heavenly Tao destiny. Do you choose to accept it? Ancient holy court? These 4 words made Guan imagine many things. But the holy court had existed for countless years, and it still needed to be seen whether the holy court existed in the time and space where Extreme was. As for the heavenly Tao destiny, he could not accept it. No. You refused to accept the heavenly Tao inheritance. You return the inheritance to its original place, waiting for the next fated person to arrive. At the age of 68, as you prepare to leave the ancient immortal's cave, you suddenly encounter the spirit of a holy god from the ancient holy court. Seeing that you are fated, he wishes to pass on a divine skill to you. Do you choose to accept? Holy God. Guan's expression turned strange. He hesitated for a moment, then chose to accept. You accept the inheritance of Holy God Yang Jian, learning the heaven-extinguishing Tao-annihilating 36 spear techniques. Yang Jian. Now Guan could completely confirm that Extreme existed in a far distant future. Holy God is a level of divine thought true immortal. After reaching this realm and then dying, how many years later must it be? There's no such thing as a duplicate name, because the heaven-extinguishing Tao-annihilating 36 spear techniques were taught to Yang Jian by divine exotic ghost king stealing the 5 elements, and Guan had seen it. Does Yang Jian's death not mean that the holy court will also perish? As Guan pondered, notifications continued to pop up in front of him, quickly drawing his attention. After learning the heaven-extinguishing Tao-annihilating 36 spear techniques, Extreme continued to battle across the world. In the next 50 years, he made a formidable name for himself on the Fallen Star continent, then proceeded to the next continent. Battles, slaughter, and exploring caves, that was Extreme's life. As you watched her leave, you erased the turmoil in your heart, dissolved the karma between you and roamed the universe alone. At the age of 5,400 years, you enter the Kanglan Immortal domain. You are attacked by a heavenly demon, slaying millions of them and earning the enmity of their entire race, but also the admiration of all beings in the Kanglan Immortal domain. At the age of 5,402 years, you are titled the Immortal Domain War God by the Domain Master of the Kanglan Immortal domain. At the age of 5,413 years, you enter an ancient forbidden land within the Kanglan Immortal domain, where you are attacked by the spirits of the battle court. You annihilate all the spirits in the forbidden land, and you arrive at the Kanglan Immortal King's Dao Palace. At the age of 5,414 years, you comprehend the Kanglan Immortal technique, triggering the Heavenly Dao Immortal Position examination. You defeat the Immortals in the exam. Would you choose to accept the Heavenly Dao Immortal Position? Heavenly Dao Immortal Position? It was unexpected that he also had a heritage similar to LV Xian's. It was within expectations that he could progress through such a heritage. Guan immediately chose no. If the Immortals knew that he could seize lifespans, what then? You refuse to accept the Heavenly Dao Immortal Position. The Immortals are furious, claiming you have offended the Heavenly Might. Within 100 years they will definitely capture you. Absurd. Guan suddenly felt fortunate that he had not accepted the heritage examination before. If he had tried it, big trouble would have surely come his way. At the age of 5,480 years, you evolve through lifespan and condense a Tao fruit, becoming a Taoist hidden immortal. At the age of 5,485 years, a group of immortals descended into the universe, starting to hunt you down. You fought tens of thousands of immortals alone and struggled to cope. At the age of 5,486 years, you arrive at the edge of the universe and encounter the heavenly spirit god guarding the boundary gate. You are annihilated by a single strike of his axe. You have died and your path has extinguished. Reincarnation ends. As the last prompt fell, Guan vanished from the porch and moved to a deserted island on the ocean, swiftly activating a lifespan barrier. He sat in meditation, beginning to absorb the life memories of Ji. Although Ji had only lived for just over 5,000 years, his experiences were in no way inferior to those of Lu Han or Long Zhan, and perhaps even more splendid. Through Ji's eyes, Guan saw the environment where the Yen clan tribe lived, with a broader heaven and earth and more abundant spiritual energy. The rabbits Ji killed in his childhood were as large as small hills. From a young age, Ji, who had exhibited exceptional strength, was the treasure of his entire tribe, dearly loved by everyone. Before he left the Yen clan tribe, he had never suffered any hardships, with everything going smoothly for him as he hunted year-round, accumulating a substantial lifespan. Afterward, Guan saw the desperately endangered dragon girl, extraordinarily beautiful with a pitiable look. If it were him, he might not be able to resist helping in such a situation. Yet the dealings of the Dragon Palace were overbearing, and no matter what, conflicts might be unavoidable. Jis grudges with the Dragon Palace lasted many years. Guan found that Ji was fighting almost every day, and with this speed his lifespan growth was definitely fast. He was immersed in Jis memories. Through Jis actions and words, he could feel that Ji was different from his other past lives. Ji had an inherent arrogance that emanated from his bones, directed only against strong opponents. When facing the weak, he could show a gentle side. Guan also saw the spirit of Yang Jian. Although its disposition differed greatly from the Yang Jian Guan knew, it was indeed Yang Jian. And there was Li Ya. During the Taichu period, Li Ya, with his white hair and powerful presence, had almost reached the current Guan's Taizong sword intent. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.